Chapter 1279. With just one attack, more than half of his divine country, which he had painstakingly nurtured for countless epochs, had been destroyed. The Sky River evil ancestor was speechless. His divine country's entrance couldn't be exposed, or would easily attract the attention of hostile experts. However, his divine country wasn't weak. As long as it didn't explode from the inside, there wouldn't be any problems. The chances of someone taking advantage of the opening of his divine country to launch a sneak attack were close to zero. The Sky River evil ancestor's face twisted. He had encountered such a close to zero chance. Even if he had reached the innate origin god realm, without several hundred years of recuperation, his divine country wouldn't be able to recover in a short period of time. Who exactly was it that was able to capture the fluctuations of the divine country's space the instant I opened it? The Sky River evil ancestor forcefully suppressed the anger and fear in his heart. The divine power in his body gradually smoothed out the backlash caused by the damage to his divine country. At the same time, his eyes scanned the surroundings, hoping to find the existence that had plotted against him. Rumble. When many true spirits and even quasi-deities rushed out, a faint blood shadow had appeared in the void at an unknown time. Wherever it passed, the void true spirits would be dyed with traces of blood. Soon after, the terrifying bloodlight silently transformed them into pools of blood. As for the water quasi-deities that had rushed out, they were like plants that had lost their moisture and looked like withered corpses. With a flash of red light, a hazy blood-red shadow appeared in the void. Only a pair of blood-red eyes could be seen, like a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood. That was an extremely terrifying expert. The way he made his entrance was shocking. So many water quasi-deities couldn't even block a single attack from him. It's him! From afar, Qin Feng's face was filled with astonishment as he looked at the blood-red figure that appeared in the void. Sixth evil ancestor. Wang Daoyi looked pensive. Qin Feng's expression was strange. That blood-red shadow was none other than the sixth evil ancestor. Qin Feng had released him and forced him to harm the Qinquan sect. He had made him an oath that was almost impossible to fulfill. Not only had he fulfilled it, but his strength had also increased greatly. At this moment, his energy fluctuations weren't inferior to those of some veteran kings. He seemed to have completely recovered his former strength, and seemed to have even improved. Qin Feng's expression remained unchanged as he stared at the blood figure. Back then, when he first met this evil ancestor, he was only at rank 14, but he did not fear him. Now that he had advanced to quasi-emperor, he was even less afraid. This evil ancestor was only a king at his peak. With Qin Feng's current cultivation, the ancient evil ancestor was no longer a big shot in his eyes. They were already on equal footing. They could even suppress and kill them. Brotherine, you've come just in time. Although these ants can't hurt me, they're too annoying. The Sky River evil god nodded slightly when he saw the sixth evil ancestor. He sat down again. The sixth evil ancestor's blood-red eyes were cold. Sky River, I hope you remember what you promised me. Brotherine, the two of us have already sworn the great oath of heaven and earth, yet you're still worried about this. As long as you help me get through this calamity, I will also lend you a hand. A faint voice came from the valley. Qin Feng and Wang Daoyi glanced at each other. The two seemed to have reached some kind of agreement. However, both of them were evil path experts. It was not surprising that they had some connections. However, in the face of the sudden appearance of the sixth evil ancestor, many water-type experts were secretly afraid and did not dare to make a move. The sixth evil ancestor, also known as the Blood Hell evil ancestor, was an evil ancestor born in the depths of the endless blood river. It was said that he was born with the ability to draw the power of the endless blood river. His methods were extremely evil. With him blocking, ordinary kings would not be able to do anything to him. For fear of breaking the vases, no one was willing to risk their lives against this terrifying blood hell evil ancestor. On another mountain peak in the southwest corner of Oblivion Valley, there was a water-type king shrouded in light blue divine light. when he saw the blood hell evil ancestor appear. The corners of his mouth curled into a sneer. His gaze fell on the depths of Oblivion Valley. Sky River, evil ancestor, you can't use the name of Sky River. Today, you won't be able to escape this calamity. He crushed an ancient message, jade in his hand. A stream of light flashed, and a scarlet fiery light pierced through the void and suddenly drilled out from somewhere in the endless void. It was an old man covered in flames like a fire god. He glanced at the young man, shrouded in blue water beside him with disgust in his eyes, and coldly snorted. He turned his gaze and searched the surroundings. A moment later, his gaze fell on the blood figure above Oblivion Valley. His pupils suddenly shrank, and in the next moment, they turned into surging flames of the sun. Sixth evil ancestor, hand over your life. In the next moment, an extremely furious roar shook the sky. In the next second, a scarlet brilliance shot out like a sun and locked onto the blood figure. The faint blurry light seemed to cut through space and time. Chi-Chi, the extremely high temperature, seemed to evaporate all the water vapor within thousands of miles of Oblivion Valley. It was as if a golden red sun had smashed down. Old ancestor Extreme Yang, it's you again. Hearing this voice, the sixth evil ancestor's expression changed. He quickly grabbed with both hands, and a surge of blood-red majestic energy was born from his palms. The blood-red god power behind him was activated. The dense blood-red light dragged down the descending golden-red sun. The sixth evil ancestor's dense blood prison energy shook. He connected with the endless blood river, and the torrential blood river energy surged out in an attempt to destroy the golden-red sun. Blood prison, you dare to kill so many of my universe-sex disciples. Even if you run to the ends of the world, this old man will not let you go. On the golden-red sun, the red-robed old man's hair was like flames, and his eyes were filled with shocking rage. Universe, 8 extremities, 8 desolaces combine. Extreme Yang God Kingdom. God Kingdom strike. Within the overbearing God fire, a golden-red God Kingdom filled with flames seemed to appear. It brought with a height that could burn billions of worlds. Old fogey, don't you go overboard. I've already explained everything clearly to you guys. Back then, it wasn't me who wanted to massacre your Chinkoan sect. It was someone else who had plotted against me behind my back. Left with no choice, I had no choice. The blood prison evil ancestor's face was gloomy, and the corners of his eyes twitched violently. Under the high temperature of the god fire, the blood river energy was evaporating too much. As the blood prison old ancestor, although he could connect with the endless blood river and obtain an endless supply of blood river energy, he couldn't withstand such high temperatures. The sea of blood that he had created with his divine nation seemed to be evaporating. Blood prison, don't try to flatter me. So many of this old man's direct descendants died in your hands. Today, you will pay for this old ancestor's life. Within the flames, the extreme young old ancestor's fire energy was even more vigorous. When he thought of the countless Xian family elites that died in the hands of the blood prison evil ancestor several years ago, the extreme young old ancestor's anger soared to the heavens. His fire god power flourished even more. The blood prison evil ancestor secretly complained. His body seemed to be roasted by the overbearing flames, and his divine soul couldn't withstand the high temperature and had begun to wither. In truth, the blood prison evil ancestor felt very wronged in his heart. Back then, he was also forced by Qin Feng. Qin Feng practically forced him to his death. If not for that, he wouldn't have been able to come out. Thinking of that youth with the aura of the dragon race, the blood prison evil ancestor secretly clenched his teeth. Damn dragon race. This old ancestor swears to take revenge. No, old ghost extreme Yang's extreme Yang divine kingdom is too much of a counter to my blood prison. I can't hold on any longer. Feeling the blood sea in his body drying up and turning into nothingness, the blood prison evil ancestor felt an intense pain in his heart. That was something he had painstakingly gathered from the depths of the blood river all these years. No, I can't hold on any longer. That blood sea is the foundation of my Tao. I only managed to recover to my peak after swallowing the 8th evil ancestor. I can't throw it all away for that old bastard Sky River. The blood hell evil ancestor tried to retreat while blocking the attacks. Forget it, I'll take my leave first. Old Ghost Extreme Yang is not to be trifled with. He is also an immemorial powerhouse who specializes in restraining me. Anyway, I've already done my best, so it's not a violation of my oath. Having made up his mind, the blood prison evil ancestor immediately roared at Oblivion Valley behind him. Sky River, this old man can only help you here. I can't hold on any longer, so I'll take my leave first. After saying this, the blood prison evil ancestor suddenly let go of his hand and turned into a bloody light, disappearing from where he stood. Rumble. Without any obstruction, the golden sun fell and suddenly bombarded outside Oblivion Valley, blasting a huge abyss in the huge valley. Blood prison, where do you think you're going? In the abyss, a golden sun soared into the sky and chased after him. Thinking of how the blood prison evil ancestor had killed so many elites of the Xian family, the extreme Yang ancestor's heart almost exploded. How could he let this evil ancestor go? In the depths of the scorched earth, a piece of black coal flew out from the depths of the earth. His clothes were ragged, making him look like a beggar. His clothes didn't cover his body, but his eyes were bright as if they were about to spit fire. The Sky River evil ancestor looked in the direction the Blood River evil ancestor flew in with a face as red as a pig's liver. He was so angry that his lungs were about to explode. Just now, he was using all his strength to stabilize the injuries caused by the explosion of his divine kingdom, so he didn't guard against the blood prison evil ancestor's escape. In an instant, extreme Yang ancestor's divine kingdom exploded. Now he was even more injured. Chapter 1280. This 6th evil ancestor is really unlucky. I heard that when he was born, he caused a bloodbath in the Eastern Spirit region to recover his strength. He even destroyed the Heaven and Earth Sex base and almost destroyed the Heaven and Earth Sex Foundation. Wang Daoi shook his head. No wonder Patriarch Extreme Yang is chasing after him. Patriarch Extreme Yang was once a very famous elder in the ancient era. He was once the Heaven and Earth Sex sect master. It was rumored that he once competed with the great wilderness Golden Crow races Fae the Arch for the Sun Origin Divine position. Although he lost to the Golden Crow the Arch in the end, he did not lose his life. This was enough to show how powerful he was. Qin Feng sneered, but did not say anything. The current 6th evil ancestor was no longer worthy of his attention. Boom! Qin Feng and Wang Daoi were watching from the side. Some extremely powerful existences in the dark had already reacted and seized this rare opportunity to attack. Ruler's Law, Life Absorption. Ruler's Law, Freezing 30,000 miles. Boundary Thearka's Law, Divine Dragon Sword. When the 3 supreme laws were unleashed, they could truly shatter space and all living things. 3 figures turned into beams of light and charged out, heading straight for the Oblivion Valley. Bang! Oblivion Valley used to be the Spirit River Sword sex base. It had huge spirit veins supporting it, and it had advanced to the Sage stage in recent years. Even so, it could not withstand such a terrifying attack. With a loud rumble, the spirit veins deep in the ground completely collapsed. Countless spirit veins shattered and scattered in all directions. This scene made many Spirit River Sword sect experts hiding in the dark field dejected. They gritted their teeth, but there was nothing they could do. During the Tribulation Transcendence, the Spirit Mountains and blessed lands that were destroyed did not have any karma. They were all born by heaven and earth. In the center, the Sky River evil ancestor, who was caught off guard, also suffered a huge injury. A huge force poured down on him, turning his body into pieces of flesh and blood. Ice descended and froze part of his soul. The divine dragon sword flew out and almost split the Sky River evil ancestor's soul into 2. Its old man divine water, heavenly venerable ice river, and the azure sea dragon king. Wang Daoi said when he saw the three figures rapidly approaching. Qin Feng's eyes flashed. Old Man Divine Water and Empyrean Ice River were both famous water element kings in ancient times. As the palace master of the ancient Holy Water Palace, Elder Holy Water could be considered a very famous rogue cultivator. Empyrean Ice River was an ancient powerhouse of the Snow region's profound sect, one of the 72 profound sects. He was an ice attribute king. The Dragon King of the Azure Sea's aura was far stronger than the Holy Water Elders. Honored Ice River was a water-type quasi-dragon emperor from the dragon race of the EC. She was a woman, and her aura was overwhelming. Even the slightest leak of the power of a quasi-emperor's laws seemed to be able to shatter a king. As soon as the three of them attacked, the pool where the Sky River evil ancestor had broken through instantly collapsed. Both his divine body and divine soul were severely injured. The three figures had cold expressions on their faces. They knew very well that even if they destroyed the evil progenitor's divine body and spirit, it still wouldn't be enough to kill him. This evil ancestor was extremely powerful. During the ancient North Baron era, he was a peerless existence at the fifth level of Heavenly Realm, the Heavenly Emperor Realm. He was proficient in many powerful techniques. The Dragon King of the Azure Sea's dress fluttered in the wind. She was beautiful but cold as ice. An icy blue divine light suddenly flew out from her back and slashed toward the Sky River evil progenitor like two bolts of lightning. Quasi-Emperor Law, Dragon Clan Divine Light. On the huge mountain peak, Qin Feng's eyes shone brightly. The Quasi-Emperor of the Dragon Clan was different from the Quasi-Emperor Law cultivated by ordinary humans. They were both Quasi-Emperor level laws, but the Quasi-Emperor Law of the Dragon Clan carried an extremely dense dragon aura. "You can't kill me." A cold voice resounded through the sky. In the middle of the Rift Valley, an icy blue divine light filled the sky. The Sky River evil progenitor's remnant body emitted a dense wave of water laws. Quasi-Emperor Law, endless growth. A dense wave of water laws fluctuated above the remnant body. Divine light filled the sky, as if it was reversing the death aura born from the remnant body. It turned death into life and gathered countless life forces around it. The remnant body was rapidly regenerating, and the divine soul returned to its original position. Is this another type of water celestial law that has been comprehended to the extreme under the water celestial law? Old Man Divine Water, Reverend Glacier, and the Azure Sea Dragon King's expressions changed when they saw this change. Endless growth was a high-level water celestial law that was extremely difficult to cultivate, even among the many water celestial laws. Among the three present, only the Azure Sea Dragon King had successfully cultivated it. However, once it was cultivated, it would become abnormally strong and difficult to kill. It's not endless growth. On the mountain peak, Qin Feng, who had been watching the battle, shook his head. A high-level water celestial law, endless growth, was of a much higher level than his inextinguishable stars. Even now, he couldn't successfully cultivate it. He had just sensed that when the Sky River evil progenitor was reborn, there seemed to be an extremely pure and dense life aura in the depths of his heart. It was likely that the Sky River evil ancestor had also absorbed that pure high-grade life essence in order to reconstruct his true body. Sky River righteous law, Sky River world destruction. An icy cold sword light shot out from the regenerated blurry figure's hand. Wherever the sword light went, it seemed as if the earth within a radius of hundreds of thousands of miles was trembling under the sword light. Blackwater Shield. The Azure Sea Dragon King reacted the fastest. His expression changed slightly, and he waved his sleeve. A strange tortoise-shell shield appeared in front of him, and a mighty sword light swept past. Crackle! The tortoise-shell shield released a ring of dense, icy blue divine light. It was like a radiant light source, and the sound was like rain hitting a banana leaf. It seems to be a treasure from another world. Qin Feng noticed the tortoise-shell shield instantly. A strange look flashed across his face. Holy Water Elder, and Ice River Knight weren't slow either. However, Holy Water Elder's expression changed. A huge palace appeared above his head. It was rippling with icy blue divine light. It was an ultimate treasure that Holy Water Elder had painstakingly refined. The Holy Water Palace was condensed from hundreds of types of true waters. It had both residential and defensive functions. The vast sword light that could divide heaven and earth swept past. Splat! More than half of the Holy Water Palace was split open. Holy Water Elder felt as if his chest was struck by lightning. His eyes were filled with shock as he spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body and the Holy Water Palace in front of him were sent flying like a cannonball. King's Law, Water, Curtain, Lotus. Ice River Knight's face was filled with shock. The moment the sword light arrived, he activated his King's Law and turned it into water lotuses in front of him. This was a famous defensive law among the low-level water-type heavenly laws. The sharp sword light slashed past, and a lotus-shaped water curtain that was tough enough to withstand the full force of any connate spirit treasure was split open like tofu. The mighty sword light cut through Ice River Knight's wooden body, and the sword light swept across thousands of miles. It was soundless. An invisible sword mark that spanned thousands of miles appeared on the ground. Splat! Blood spurted from where he stood. The divine light in Ice River Knight's eyes dimmed. He looked at the Sky River evil ancestor with an extremely horrifying expression. His feet moved, and his body was split into two. He suddenly fell to the ground. This king's divine soul and true spirit were killed by a sword strike. Completely dead. His vitality was completely erased by a sword strike. This scene shocked many of the experts who were watching in the dark. The Sky River evil ancestor sneered. A mere ordinary king actually dared to obstruct a quasi-emperor, courting death. When a king's law collided with a boundary emperor's law, it was like an ordinary iron block colliding with a divine weapon. In the end, there was only one result. Trying to use the water curtain lotus to block his sword light? Overestimating oneself. Ignorant bumpkin, you don't understand the difference between a king and a boundary emperor. He looked up with a cold smile and locked onto the remaining dragon emperor of the Azure Sea in Elder Divine Water. He was about to speak, but in the next moment, his face froze as he sensed a terrifying danger. His expression changed greatly, and his figure flashed like lightning, moving thousands of feet away. He wanted to dodge, but it was too late. Splat! The icy blue brilliance followed him like a shadow, following his movement and sweeping along his body. Peerlessly sharp, flesh and blood were separated. His entire body was suddenly separated as he moved. Just like Empyrean Ice River, he was split into two by an extremely mournful sword light that swept from behind. The moment his divine soul and divine body were split into two, the Sky River evil ancestor was terrified and angry. He saw a black shadow appear behind him from the corner of his eyes. That person was extremely handsome. He was dressed in a black robe, his long hair draped over his shoulders, his eyes were like stars, and there was a trace of evil charm at the corner of his mouth. His slender white fingers were holding an invisible azure sharp longsword that was purely condensed from the laws. This person was Qin Feng. When the Sky River evil ancestor locked onto Ice River Knight, he used the space-time power of the Chief God Space to also lock onto the Sky River evil ancestor. When the Sky River evil ancestor killed Ice River Knight and was distracted, he seized the opportunity. He suddenly launched a sneak attack and heavily injured the Sky River evil ancestor with one sword strike. Chapter 1281. The Sky River evil ancestor was split in half, but he did not die. In the depths of his heart, an endless stream of high-level life essence was endlessly transferring life force to his divine body and even his divine soul. Splat! A sword light flashed. Under the chilling gazes of the crowd, Qin Feng chopped down with his sword again, splitting the body apart. A blue gem-like spiritual light flew out from the Sky River evil ancestor's body. It carried a strong foreign aura, Like a shooting star, it wanted to fly away as soon as it appeared. Qin Feng smiled coldly and grabbed the ice blue pearl. Sensing the rich water-type nomological fluctuations, Qin Feng calmly kept it in the creator space and completely suppressed it. My treasure! The Sky River evil ancestor let out a miserable roar. His body burned with bright divine light, turned into a ray of light, and merged with the aqua diffraction sword as he charged toward Qin Feng with all his might. It's useless. Although you're stronger than the average water-type quasi-emperor, it's your doomsday that you've met me. Qin Feng directly mobilized the creator space. On the spiritual platform of the heavenly court 3 feet above his head, there seemed to be an extremely glorious and huge world floating in the divine light. A huge force swept across the sky. Boom! The divine light, transformed from the aqua diffraction sword, was broken, and the huge force shattered the Sky River evil ancestor's body. The energy of time and space swept over, and it enveloped and swallowed all the scattered remnants of their bodies. No, I can't accept this. If not for, I would never have lost to you. The Sky River evil ancestor's desperate wails came from the vortex. However, a moment later, his broken body was swallowed by the creator's space, and his voice disappeared. The Sky River evil ancestor's divine body and divine soul were decomposed by the creator space's power, turning into pure yuan qi for the crystal wall to absorb, completely turning into nourishment for the creator space. The most important quasi-emperor divine spark was slowly analyzed and purified by the creator space, turning into the accumulation of the creator space's nomological comprehension. It was also used as a reference material for Qin Feng to comprehend other water-type heavenly laws. Qin Feng closed his eyes and felt an inexplicable water fortune being devoured by his own fortune, turning into nourishment for him. Rumble! The dark clouds that had enveloped hundreds of thousands of miles in the sky began to dissipate, and the terrifying atmosphere began to dissipate. For a time, many onlookers stared at the black-clothed youth in the middle of Oblivion Valley in shock. To be able to kill a water-type quasi-emperor so easily. They were probably stronger than a quasi-emperor. With such strength, he could definitely be ranked as one of the top existences in the world. He just didn't know where this black-robed youth came from. However, it wouldn't be long before his identity would be known by everyone. Such a terrifying powerhouse was definitely not a nameless person. Within the crowd, there were 2 figures who were quietly retreating. Qin Feng noticed it immediately. The 2 of you, please wait. Qin Feng spoke softly. In a flash, he appeared before the 2 of them, the Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea. At this moment, the 2 experts' expressions were somewhat ugly. Qin Feng didn't pay attention to these 2 people. His gaze swept across and fell on the depths of the dust cloud not far away. With a wave of his sleeve, a stream of light fell into his hand. It was a water-type divine weapon ranked 11th on the All Heavens divine weapon list, the Waterscape Diffraction Sword. Since the Sky River evil ancestor was dead, this sword naturally lost its owner. This sword is just right to be my sword. Qin Feng's lips curled into a gentle smile. Everyone's expression changed slightly as they looked at the Waterscape Diffraction sword in the black-clothed youth's hand. A strange look flickered in their eyes. The Waterscape Diffraction Sword was one of the few peerless divine weapons on the All Heavens divine weapon list. It was extremely sharp. It was also full of mysteries. For a water-type cultivator, if they could wield this sword, it would be easy for them to fight above their level. If it were an ordinary person, the many experts watching in secret would definitely not let it go. However, the black-clothed youth in front of them was a true fiend. A supreme existence at the quasi-emperor level was cut into several pieces by his sword. Everyone couldn't even dodge in time, let alone snatch the treasure. This Waterscape Diffraction sword was magnificent. The sword's body was icy blue, like pure and flawless waterlight. The sword's body was slender, like liquid. Holding the sword hilt, Qin Feng felt as if he was holding a boundless ocean. He could easily control thousands of waters, rivers, and sees through this waterscape diffraction sword. The Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea looked at this mysterious black-clothed youth as if they were facing a formidable enemy. The two of them had fought with the Sky River Evil Ancestor before. They knew very well how powerful the Sky River Evil Ancestor was and how difficult it was to deal with him. Even Heavenly Venerable Ice River, a famous ice-type king of an era, was killed with one sword strike. However, in just an instant, the Sky River Evil Ancestor was killed by this mysterious black-clothed youth. Even the Sky River Evil Ancestor was no match for this person. Obviously, the two of them were no match for this mysterious black-clothed youth. Qin Feng didn't seem to notice the nervous expressions of the Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea. His gaze fell on the waterscape diffraction sword in his hand, and a hint of a cold smile flashed in his eyes. Sizzle, sizzle. An ink-like, sinister aura was born in the waterscape diffraction sword. As if it knew that it had been discovered, a monstrous sword light flew out like ink and turned into a torrential rain that enveloped Qin Feng. The Sky River Evil Ancestor's remnant soul imprint was in this sword. The Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea's eyes lit up when they saw this. Their expressions changed slightly, and a trace of killing intent appeared in their eyes as they stared at the black-clothed youth. A chance? However, the moment this ink-like horrifying sword light left Qin Feng's face, an indescribably horrifying aura appeared, and time and space in all directions seemed to freeze. A terrifying divine power that was above all the worlds appeared around the black-clothed youth, and time and space within a radius of 10,000 miles froze for a moment. The Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea were horrified. They didn't know when, but they found that they were like ants in the tide of gravity, and they couldn't move at all. A huge pressure pressed down on them, and they felt that their bones and even their souls would collapse at any time. The Heavenly Ways space-time power? Far away, on the mountain peak, Wang Daoi's eyes flashed with a strange light as he felt the strange, primitive, and terrifying pressure coming from the mountain peak. He had long since noticed this extremely powerful and wondrous power. He had a guess before, but he didn't dare to be sure. Now he was sure. This was the Heavenly Ways space-time divine power that only the Overgods had. What a mysterious guy. He can actually control the Heavenly Ways space-time power. He looked slightly serious. The Heavenly Ways space-time power was something that he hadn't comprehended even after reincarnating 10 times. It was extremely difficult to comprehend the Heavenly Ways space-time power, unless one reached the peak of the heaven-defying Great Emperor realm, or if one was lucky enough to upgrade their divine kingdom to the Overgod space, they might be able to obtain a part of the Heavenly Ways space-time power. Otherwise, it was absolutely impossible. With the Heavenly Ways space-time power, it was no wonder that this junior brother of the sect master could easily kill people of the same level as him. Wang Daoi was a little envious. Comprehending the Heavenly Ways space-time power in advance wasn't as simple as just increasing one's combat strength. The space-time divine energy of the Heavenly Tao enveloped the water-scene diffraction sword like a clear stream. Accompanied by shrill and invisible screams, the sword energy that was as dense as water transformed into one distorted face after another, and wisps of black gas were expelled. As the Sky River Evil Ancestor's remnant soul imprint in the aquascape diffraction sword was completely purified, Qin Feng grabbed the hilt of the aquascape diffraction sword in the void. He looked at the Holy Water Elder and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea with a deep look in his eyes. You two should know what I mean. There is only one master for all the water veins in the Spirit Sea continent. Make a choice. Surrender or die. Chapter 1282. Qin Feng had long since expressed his determination to unify the water lineage. The more experts he subdued, the stronger the water lineage fortune he gathered, and the higher the chances of becoming a water lineage master god. This was proportional. The Azure Sea Dragon King was a water lineage quasi-emperor, so the water lineage fortune he gathered was much stronger than ordinary people. The Divine Water Elder was an ancient, unaffiliated person, so he also had a part of the ancient water lineage fortune. It would have been fine if he hadn't encountered him, but since he had, Qin Feng definitely wouldn't let him go. The powerful quasi-emperor aura was emitted, and the divine light from the Master God's space descended. The black-clothed youth's aura skyrocketed. It was almost comparable to the fifth step of the heaven-defying Great Emperor realm. Seeing this scene, many water-type experts who were secretly thinking about whether they could take advantage of the situation were aghast. Many of them left without thinking. If they continued to stay here and waited for the black-clothed youth to subdue the dragon race quasi-emperor, the Divine Water Elder wouldn't let them go. Qin Feng sensed the departure of these people. There were many water-type experts, including many water-type quasi-deities. Among them, there were one or two extremely mysterious water-type kings. However, in Qin Feng's eyes, these were all small fries. The water lineage quasi-emperor in front of him was the real big fish. Subduing this dragon quasi-emperor was comparable to subduing 10 water-type kings. The Divine Water Elder and the Azure Sea Dragon King's expressions were gloomy, fearful, and furious. The two of them wanted to leave, but the power emitted by the other party made them very clear that they were no match for the black-clothed youth. If they fled, there would only be one result. However, if they surrendered, the price would be too heavy. The two of them were experts from the ancient era. Heaven knew how much effort they had spent since they sealed themselves. It was already a great fortune that they didn't die in the process. He had paid such a huge price and taken such a huge risk, all for the sake of obtaining the top innate origin deity position. Once they surrendered, the two of them would have no chance of obtaining the first type of innate water-type origin god position. Qin Feng seemed to have seen the unwillingness in their hearts. Why do you two have to do this? Sometimes, there's no need to talk about god positions when you don't even have your life. Our pursuit is eternal. Their expressions changed slightly. Qin Feng looked at the expressions of the two experts and said with a smile, "Actually, it's not a bad choice for you to follow me, especially you, Dragon King of the Azure Sea. I'm the first-generation dragon ancestor of the dragons. It's not wrong for you to submit to me." As soon as he finished speaking, a trace of the first dragon ancestor's aura leaked from Qin Feng's body. "You're the dragon ancestor?" The Dragon King of the Azure Sea shuddered. Then, she sensed the wisp of ancestral aura from the source of the ancient dragon vein leaking out of Qin Feng's body. The bloodline in her body trembled slightly, and a terrifying feeling of being suppressed came over her. She took a deep breath. She was also an innate dragon race bloodline within 3 generations. Only the more powerful dragon ancestor could suppress her Dragon King bloodline. Most of the resistance in her heart disappeared. Submitting to a human powerhouse was a humiliation to the proud dragon clan. However, it will be different if the target was the dragon ancestor. For the lower-level dragons to submit to the higher-level dragons, this was the natural order of the dragon bloodline. However, the Dragon King of the Azure Sea still had some concerns. Deity position. With her strength, she might have been able to reach the acquired or middle deity position long ago. If it wasn't for the innate origin deity position, she might have become a true god dozens of eras ago. For this goal, she had persevered for dozens of eras. It was not easy for her to encounter such a great era. If she submitted to the dragon ancestor, all her efforts would be in vain. When Qin Feng saw the cold Dragon King of the Azure Sea lowering her head in deep thought, he guessed the dragon race boundary emperor's concerns. He immediately smiled. "You don't have to worry. The fate tribute is only to determine the master. I haven't fallen to the point of extracting the fate of my subordinates. I won't hide it from you. My divine kingdom has already been upgraded to the overgod space, and I can already travel through the major realms. Do you think I still need to squeeze my subordinates dry?" Although Qin Feng transmitted his voice, he did not hide it from the holy water elder beside him. At this moment, the ancient, independent cultivator's eyes were filled with astonishment. The Dragon King of the Azure Sea's eyes were also filled with disbelief. The Overgod space was exclusive to the Overgods since ancient times. Only the Overgods could control a part of the mysteries of space-time and travel through the depths of space-time without restraint. Instinctively, the Dragon King of the Azure Sea and the Holy Water Elder did not believe it. However, they soon understood. Clearly, the power Qin Feng used to suppress them was the power of space-time. Only the heavenly Tao's power of space-time possessed by the Overgod could render them defenseless. Their expressions changed. They were a little tempted. With the Overgod space, the black-robed young man's chances of becoming a rank 16 Overgod in this era were probably much higher than most people. Following a future sovereign was definitely not a loss for the two of them. On the contrary, this was definitely something that would make any true god envious and jealous. I'm willing to submit to the Dragon Ancestor and serve under the Dragon Ancestor. The Dragon King of the Azure Sea made her decision and expressed her determination instantly. She took a few steps forward and knelt down on one knee in front of Qin Feng. The Holy Water Elder also stepped forward and knelt down on one knee like the Azure Sea Dragon King. The Holy Water Elder greets the Overgod. Qin Feng narrowed his eyes slightly. He could feel two majestic water vein fortunes merging with the red river of providence from the void. His control over the power of the water of heaven and earth seemed to have become much smoother. Vaguely, his divine soul seemed to be able to sense that a few unknown existences had appeared above the river of destiny and had formed a connection with him. Deity positions. Water deity positions. It seemed that as he devoured the water vein fortunes of the Sky River Evil Ancestor, the Holy Water Elder, and the Dragon King of the Azure Sea, his karma with those water deity positions had increased greatly. As long as he needed them, those water deity positions would be at his fingertips. After sensing carefully, Qin Feng gave up on trying to obtain those deity positions. What a pity. They all seemed to be acquired water deity positions. Qin Feng shook his head. However, there was a hint of joy in his eyes. Although he did not plan to obtain acquired deity positions, this was still a significant improvement. He was finally able to sense the existence of water deity positions after the star deity positions. In the future, as long as he continued to gather the corresponding fortunes, he might be able to sense the existence of a culmination deity position or an innate origin deity position. He looked around and closed his eyes slightly. He locked onto a huge deity nation, the Sky River Evil Ancestors Deity Nation. Although that deity nation was destroyed, it was still a deity nation. It could be used as food in the Overgod space. After digesting it, it could be used as a subsidiary trial plane. After dealing with the Sky River Evil Ancestor, Qin Feng called out to Wang Daoyi and returned to Xingqian School with the Dragon King of the Azure Sea and the Holy Water Elder. Not long after he left, a stream of light flew into the ruined Oblivion Valley. This person was none other than the Water Monarch who attracted the extreme young ancestor and scared away the Blood Hell Evil Ancestor. Sensing the special fluctuations left in the surrounding void, this mysterious young man's eyes flickered with a strange light. The space-time power of the heavenly Tao. After pondering for a moment, he smiled faintly. Fine, I'll leave the waterscape diffraction soar with you for now. However, I, the Sky River, will retrieve this sword one day. With a flash, he turned into a stream of water light and disappeared from where he was. Chapter 1283. For more than half a month, the Spirit Sea continent was not peaceful. The failure of another Tao affirmation cultivator made many experts rejoice, but at the same time, there was no lack of sorrow. The Sky River Evil Ancestor was extraordinary. He was a watertight boundary emperor. Even a boundary emperor died in the hands of someone who blocked the path. This poured a huge bucket of cold water on some people who wanted to take the opportunity to affirm their Tao, completely waking them up. Even some experts who had obtained the acquired divine position suppressed the urge to reach the Tao integration stage. The undercurrents of many forces were surging. There were also many tyrannical experts who secretly sped up the merger and swallowed the other forces. Many ancient experts were also shaken. They appeared everywhere and destroyed some of the sects, collecting the fate energy needed to affirm their Tao as soon as possible. Among the 72 mysterious sects, many of them were affected by the aftermath. They were in a precarious situation, or they were simply destroyed and withdrew from their position as the overlords of the spirit realm. However, in a short period of time, no experts dared to pay attention to the many spirit realms around the realm of stars, because there was a peerless existence here that could kill a boundary emperor. The primeval heavenly king, Xingqian School, above the Lingxiao Hall. The sun, moon, and stars shone here, and the rich starlight was extremely intense. There were countless Xingqian School formations around it, forming a huge star formation. The Great Star God Formation. The mountains were linked together, and through Qin Feng's guidance, the power of many stars in the world. The surging starlight origin energy here was beyond the imagination of many Xingqian School experts. On the central throne, Qin Feng's divine consciousness guided the Sky River Divine Kingdom, and the refinement of the Sky River evil ancestors' divine kingdom was also coming to an end. This huge divine kingdom was finally digested and sent into the Star River, becoming a subsidiary star of the primeval master star. In essence, this divine kingdom was damaged by the big explosion, and its value was not great. It was suitable to send it into the Star River and become a subsidiary star of the primeval master star. It could help the primeval master star absorb the power of chaos outside the realm and further accelerate its evolution. In the future, if it was properly arranged, it could even become a trial ground for the disciples of Xingqian School. It was a waste recycling. There's such a thing. Qin Feng waved his sleeve, and an icy blue light radiated from his sleeve. A pearl floated in the air, and in the middle of it, there was a water-type law that was clearly different from this world. Who would have thought that I would be able to obtain the sea god's heart in such a way? Neptune's heart. This was a treasure formed after the death of the sea god from another world. In the later generations, it also left behind a lot of water-type treasures. Qin Feng had once coveted this treasure in order to cultivate his water attribute cultivation method. However, the whereabouts of this treasure were elusive, and there was no news of its whereabouts. Thus, he put aside and turned his attention to the third sword ancestor. He released the third sword ancestor and obtained the number 1 spatial technique, the dark space creation art. For this reason, he had paid quite a price. The Sanxing Stone and the Tear of the Underworld Emperor were the treasures that could gather souls for the condensed jade incense. Qin Feng released his divine thought. The sea god's heart clearly contained a water-type law power that was different from this world, and it seemed to be very rich. I can give it to the creator's space to analyze or refine it. Let's see what kind of treasure it is. He casually stored it in the creator's space. Qin Feng's eyes lit up slightly. Although the water-type law of another world was definitely not the same as the water-type law of this world, he could draw inferences from it and obtain another type of comprehension that was different from this world's water-type law. This would be very beneficial to the Tao of Creator, and it could be used as a resource. This time, Qin Feng could be said to have gained a lot from his trip to block the path. He had gained a lot, but if we're to talk about the biggest gain this time, it would probably be this. On the throne, Qin Feng revealed a slight smile at the corner of his eyes. He stretched out a hand, and there seemed to be a pitch-black stream of light dancing and spinning on his palm. It was like a pitch-black spirit snake, spinning rapidly around his palm, cutting through space and time. Its speed was so fast that space and time seemed to be blurred. The 13th water-type heavenly law, 9 underworlds destruction. This was a water-type heavenly law of the 9 great connate primordial waters, comprehended by Deshang of the 9 underworlds black water. He had obtained the 9 underworlds black waters' extremely destructive arcana. In addition, Qin Feng had obtained a part of the Sky River evil ancestors' arcana essence of the Sky River's path of destruction. The two combined to form this heavenly law. This was considered a heavenly law that covered a large area. It was not suitable for single-target attacks, but it was extremely suitable as a means of destruction. After comprehending this heavenly law, Qin Feng had basically dabbled in the 9 great Khanate primordial waters, 9 underworlds, extreme Een, star sky, cosmic light, Azura, 9 suns, all spirits, and 1 origin. These 9 heavenly laws were to Shang's. Only the Azura and 9 suns, innate primordial waters, were left untouched. Next, Qin Feng's attention was placed on the Azura Blood River primordial water. The Azura Blood River primordial water leaned towards the inside. Qin Feng controlled the underworld and had personally opened the endless blood river. He had comprehended the mysteries within and was more proficient in this aspect. As for the 9 suns primordial water, it would be the 15th and final water-type heavenly law. With 15 water-type heavenly laws combined, Qin Feng would establish the final foundation to become a water-type over God. The pitch-black 9 underworld's heavenly river in his hand gradually disappeared into his body as his divine power converged. Next, I have to quickly gather the water-type and star-type destinies and increase my own destinies as soon as possible to sense the innate water origin deity position, or the innate origin star deity position. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a strange light. At this moment, several footsteps came from outside the hall. In Qin Feng's eyes, 5 figures entered the Lingxiao Palace from the entrance of the palace. Just as Qin Feng was filled with ambition and wanted to repeat the success of the primordial chaos Xingqian school in a huge province south of the realm of stars and many other spirit regions, something that greatly affected the various forces in the spirit sea continent, or rather, the Xingqian school, was happening. Heavenly Spirit Region, the newly built Tianyang City. It was located at the border between the Heavenly Spirit Region and the Sun-Moon Spirit Region. The overlord of the Heavenly Spirit Region was the Tianliang sect, which was ranked 54th among the 72 mysterious sections. The overlord of the Sun-Moon Spirit Region was the Sun-Moon Sword sect, which was ranked 39th. Today, the Tianliang sect and the Sun-Moon Sword sect completed the merger of the 2 sects under the leadership of 2 powerful figures in Tianyang City. They were reinstated as the primordial chaos Xingqian school. When the name was reinstated as the primordial chaos Xingqian school, the 2 powerful figures from the Tianliang sect and the Sun-Moon Sword sect immediately made a joint decision. The first target was the primordial chaos Xingqian school, the overlord of the primordial chaos spirit region, the primordial chaos sword sect. Their purpose was clear: to reunite the primordial chaos Xingqian school and unify the destiny of the lineage of stars. Chapter 1284. Sectmaster, your instructions have invited Master Zhua and Master Hua from the Mystic Association headquarters in the capital of stars. We've already asked them to send a portion of the Mystic Association elders to the various main cities to rebuild the cities according to the number of heavenly cycles in the 4-star zones and determine the number of guards in the various subsidiary cities. Lingxiao Hall. On the central throne, a handsome young man in black was lazily leaning against the throne. In the main hall, the Azure Emperor Elder of the 5 Emperor Elders reported respectfully. Elder Qing the Arch retreated to the side. Elder Qing the Arch stepped forward. Elder Qing the Arch had a head full of red hair. He was burly and had a red beard that looked like steel needles on his face. Qin Feng even beat up his disciple, the next generation Red the Arch, Qing Xinu. Elder Qing the Arch was full of respect as he looked at the sect master. Sect master, according to your orders, the disciples of the weapon refining residents have been sent out to excavate volcanoes and build cities. Many main cities have already started construction. I believe it will be completed soon. Elder Qing the Arch was full of admiration for this sect master. His attainments in array formations, weapon refining, and elixir pills were simply astounding. Many ancient elders in the sect even believed that he was already a level 9 god of medicine and level 9 god of array formations. According to this sect master's plan, once that huge array diagram was completed, it would combine with the inescapable net that Xingqian School had been building. No matter how chaotic the world was, it would not affect Xingqian School anymore. On the other side, Elder Jean also spoke. According to sect master's orders, all the disciples of Star-Lord Temple have been sent out to guard various places and monitor the movements of the various sects to prevent them from sabotaging the plan. Qin Feng nodded on the throne. This is especially important. Over the years, I have discovered that some powerful beings from other regions have secretly infiltrated our Linghai continent to seize providence. Everyone must be careful. Elder Qing the Arch. Elder Qing the Arch looked stern. The wind message hall that you control is the tongue of the sect. You must ensure that the realm of stars is as impenetrable as a steel wall. If any powerful beings from other regions appear, I hope you could discover them immediately and catch them. Powerful beings from other regions. The 5 Emperors' elders' expression changed. Since ancient times, otherworldly powerhouses had been existences akin to demons in the outer realms. They plundered and devoured the karmic luck of the world, taking away the good fortune of the world. To the world, they would often cause terrifying damage. There were even many worlds that were destroyed by those extraterrestrial devils. This kind of existence could be said to be hated by all. The 5 Arch-Elders looked at each other and were inwardly shocked and furious by this news. Oh right, Qin Feng's heart skipped a beat as he looked at Elder Qing the Arch. Elder Qing Di, your Wind Trust Palace has always had a close relationship with the Spirit Treasure Sect. You can find an opportunity to contact the Spirit Treasure Sect and sell this information to them at a low price. Among the 72 mysterious sects, the Spirit Treasure Sect was a famous sect that was established through business. Not only did they sell all kinds of treasures, they also sold information. This matter concerns the entire Spirit Sea realm. We cannot afford to lose it. The Azure Thearch's face was solemn. Don't worry, Sectmaster. This subordinate will definitely settle this matter properly. All right, since this is the case, all of you may leave. Strive to complete the construction of the 4 directions Star Area King City, as well as the 365 main cities in the Heavenly Cycle Star area, as soon as possible. The earlier it is completed, the more stable Xingqian School will be. Yes, Sectmaster. The 5 Arch-Elders left quickly. Seeing this, Qin Feng nodded to himself. According to the number of stars in the Heavenly Cycle Star area, 365 main cities would be built. Then, with the 365 main cities as the center, 48,000 satellite cities would be built. This was the first thing Qin Feng did after becoming the Sectmaster of Xingqian School. By doing so, not only could he consolidate the realm of stars, but he could also strengthen his control over the realm of stars through the many cities. Secondly, with the many great formations linked together, in addition to the presence of Qin Feng, a boundary emperor, even if a master god were to attack the realm of stars in the future, it would be safe and sound. This was the nest that Qin Feng had built for himself. Thirdly, with this huge formation, Qin Feng would have the ability to conquer the other sects in the lineage of star. It could be said to be killing several birds with one stone. However, such a huge plan would be almost impossible to complete under normal circumstances. Not to mention the opposition of the Arch-Elders. Just the special materials needed to build tens of thousands of cities would be enough to make Xingqian School suffer. Only when the Golden Era came, when the Spirit Sea realm reversed in the direction of the ancient times, with the impact of the spiritual energy tide and the endless supply of spiritual materials and spiritual medicines, could Xingqian School afford such expenses. Another reason was the resistance from the sect. To build tens of thousands of star cities, it would affect the interests of the 9 great empires, as well as the various clans and sections. Over the past few days, many of the Arch-Elders in the sect had come to the Lingxiao Hall to explain the pros and cons, trying their best to persuade Qin Feng, the new sect master, to change his mind. However, Qin Feng was able to deal with these arch-elders with ease. This was mainly attributed to his actions in the immemorial land. Out of the 9 great empires, apart from the few honest great empires, after the other empires were destroyed, the star sect control over the realm of stars had risen to a huge level. Many of the sect's higher-ups who were entangled with the empires and kingdoms had been removed. Even though there was some resistance, after some exchanges of interests, those arch-elders received enough benefits and stopped objecting. In general, the entire realm of stars was moving in an excellent direction in Qin Feng's hands. The stronger Xingqian school was, the greater the benefits of being the sect master of Xingqian school. Qin Feng could feel that the lineage of stars represented by Xingqian school was rapidly growing. It was like an evil dragon that could swallow the surrounding forces of the realm of stars at any time. Many thoughts flashed in his mind. On the throne, Qin Feng suddenly raised his head and glanced outside the hall. "Come in." As if he had heard the call, a figure in green appeared silently from the sea of clouds and returned from outside the hall. It was Elder Yang Qingsong of Emperor Qing. Yang Qingsong bowed slightly to the peerless emperor who was surrounded by endless starlight on the throne in the center. "Sect Master." On the throne, Qin Feng looked indifferent. He seemed to have known about the elder of Emperor Qing for a long time. He was not surprised. Instead, he raised his eyes and said indifferently, "Tell me, how's the matter I asked you to investigate? We're the true disciples now." When he became the sect master of Xingqian school, Qin Feng discovered this. At one time, Qin Feng had suspected that Ji Huang Qian Kai, Yuan Daozhen, Lu Qingyang, Ling Duxiu, Zhang Xian, Shun Xiu, Ling Shuanghua, Guan Roland, and other reincarnations of stars have been murdered by star monarch Ziwei. But soon, Qin Feng dispelled this doubt. Not to mention the others, ancestor of techniques, Shun Xiu, and sword ancestor Zhang Xian were definitely not easy to be plotted against. Also, Ji Huang, had the Ji family of the Archean era as her backing. Not long ago, Qin Feng had also asked the other elders about this matter, but those elders were all hesitant and could not say anything. As a last resort, he could only ask Elder Emperor Qing to secretly investigate. Chapter 1285. In the main hall, Elder Qing Di felt a little awkward. No matter what, this was a scandal of Xingqian school. If not for Qin Feng forcing him to investigate, he definitely wouldn't have gotten involved in this mess. Because many elders played a dishonorable role in this matter. Needless to say, Qin Feng guessed from Elder Qing Di's stuttering expression that this matter must have involved a lot of people. Many people were probably robbed of their celestial lord origin without anyone knowing. Their ending wasn't too good. Xingqian school was too rotten. Qin Feng sighed. No wonder Xingqian school was destroyed in the future. Although Xingqian school had heavenly rules and regulations, they were useless. Instead, they seemed to have become the protector of these elders and relied on to abuse their power. Even Qin Feng couldn't get rid of these abuses in a short period of time. Let's talk about the original 12 true disciples first. Where did they go? Qin Feng's expression was cold. Xingqian school originally only had 9 true disciples. They were the first true disciple, Gong Ao, the second true disciple, Shi Xian, the third true disciple, Fu Tian, the fourth true disciple, Ying Tian Qing, the fifth true disciple, Ji Qing Xian, the sixth true disciple, Shen Ai, the seventh true disciple, Fei Wuji, the eighth true disciple, Yi Hichu, and the ninth true disciple, Jialan. As Qin Feng and the others grew up, 3 more true disciples were added in these years. Qin Feng was in the top 3 and was called the primordial true king. The other 2 were Wang Daoi and Xinxiu. One was called the underworld ancestor and the other the technique ancestor. They were ranked 2nd and 4th respectively. When Qin Feng returned to the sect, among the many true disciples, he only saw Fu Tian, who was originally ranked 3rd, and Yi Hichu, who was now ranked 5th and 11th. Neither of them were reincarnated celestial lords. Fu Tian was shockingly talented and seemed to have another opportunity. He obtained the legacy of the primordial era's heavenly talisman Taoist. His talisman techniques seemed to be able to change the world. It was very scary. Heavenly talisman Taoist was an ancient magnate. He was the one who gave birth to the ancient legends. He studied the 3,000 innate divine runes in the heavenly Tao stone and created the 3,000 innate talisman seeds, almost creating the rune era. Ihichu was also an extremely talented person. Although he had nothing else, his comprehension ability was frighteningly high. It was said that he spent the entire day studying the star atlas and comprehended many shocking truths from it. Although his strength was weak and his talent was lacking, he was proficient in the 3,000 Taoist scriptures. In the Tao of divination, he could be considered a genius. The Azure Dharch hesitated for a moment before speaking up. Sect leader about this, in fact, the 10 true disciples are all here, but a few years ago, most of them went out to look for opportunities. As for Qian Kai, Lu Qingyong, Ling Duxiu, Shan Xiu, Duan Yu, and other disciples, the Azure Dharch elder coughed dryly. His voice was a little dry. A bitter smile flashed across his eyes. The few celestial lords he mentioned were all reincarnated from the main stars. Among the 36 main stars, there were the 7 Kill Star, Alcade Star, Lianjin Star, Ravenous Wolf Star, Ziwei Star, Tianfu Star, Wutsu Star, Tianxiang Star, Taiyang Star, Great Gate Star, Tianji Star, Taiyin Star, Tianyang Star, Tianong Star, Tianma Star, Hongmeng Star, Tai Star, Yuanshi Star, and the 5 innate grand stars, Tai, Taichu, Taishu, Taisu, Tai Chi, and so on. Among the 36 main stars, many were in Xingqian school. Among them were Yuanshi Star, Alcade Star, Taiyang Star, Taiyin Star, Taichu Star, Tai Star, Great Gate Star, Ziwei Star, Taichu Star, the 5 grand stars, and the Destruction Star Master of the 4 innate grand stars. It could be said that the stars were gathered together. At that time, Xingqian school's luck was like adding oil to a fire. However, the Alcade Star and Taichu Star both died in the hands of Qin Feng, the original Star Master. There were more second-generation stars, but many of them were devoured by the powerful Star Masters because of the clashes. In order to prevent such losses, Xingqian school had been nurtured separately. Who would have thought that Myrtle Star would suddenly appear? The moment he appeared, most of the 3rd generation and 2nd generation Star Masters were devoured by him. Later on, he even occupied Xingqian school's gate. Many Star Masters had no choice but to leave to seek refuge. He didn't dare to hide anything. Elder Qing Di told him the whole story. So, many Star Lords in the sect went to other spirit realms. Qin Feng nodded slightly. There was no lack of helplessness in his eyes. In fact, those Star Lords who could escape from Myrtle Star and the vicious hands of the elders were the true elites of Xingqian school. Almost all of them had great luck. If these Star Lords could submit to him, Xingqian school's luck would not only increase greatly. Myrtle Star was unable to do anything right. He was killing the goose that laid the golden eggs. If it were him, he would definitely not deal with so many Star Lords like this. After thinking for a while, Qin Feng looked at Elder Qing Di with a hint of anticipation. Elder Qing Di, do you have any news of my maidservant? Ever since Hong Lian left him a message a few years ago, saying that she had gone to find some treasure trove, there had been no news of her. Qin Feng had once tried to use a divination method to deduce her aura. Although her aura showed that she was still alive, her whereabouts were indistinct and impossible to find. Bloody Queen Qin Honglian. Elder Qing Di pondered for a moment. He had a deep impression of Bloody Queen Qin Honglian. Qin Honglian was one of the most outstanding students of the next batch of All Stars College students after Qin Feng. She was on the same level as Grand Unity Star Lord Shen Xiu, Great Gate Star Lord Duan Yu, Absolute Beginning Star Lord Jiang Taichu, and 9 Brilliant Star Lord by Ruofei. Grand Unity Star, Great Gate Star, and Absolute Beginning Star were all main stars. The strength of these Star Lords was obvious. The 9 Brilliant Star Lord was more special. Although he was a 3rd-generation star, he was formed by 9 3rd-generation stars. His strength was not inferior to a 1st-generation main Star Lord. Qin Honglian's ability to compete with these people attracted the attention of many Xingqian school elders. Qin Honglian was indeed dazzling. She was the first seat of the Vermilion Bird region. During the Hidden Dragon competition, her performance was not inferior to Qin Feng's. After that, she advanced triumphantly. Her strength was not inferior to some core disciples. However, 2 years ago, after leaving behind a message, he quietly disappeared. Various memories flashed through his mind. Elder Qing Di looked at the slightly concerned black-clothed youth on the throne. After organizing his words, he spoke. Ever since we received the sect master's orders, we have carefully investigated Honglian's whereabouts. She seemed to have left the realm of stars early on and went to the Langya spirit domain. From there, she entered the sunken abyss spirit domain. Our Wind Trust Hall is not very clear about her whereabouts after that. Elder Qing Di's heart skipped a beat when he saw the black-clothed youth's gloomy expression. He hurriedly said, "We went to the Lingbao sect and found out from their channels that Miss Honglian seemed to have entered the 9 great divine lands in the end. She disappeared there, and we lost contact with her." Chapter 1286. 9 Great Divine Lands. On the throne, Qin Feng's face darkened. The Spirit Sea realm was known as the 3,000 State Domain, the 3,000 Spirit Domain. Among them, the richest and most fertile were the 9 Great Divine Lands. The 9 Great Divine Lands were divided into the 4 symbols and 5 manifestations. The 4 symbols divine lands were the Water Divine Lands, the Fire Divine Lands, the Wind Divine Lands, and the Earth Divine Lands. The 5 Grand Divine Lands were the Grand Change Divine Lands, Grand Beginning Divine Lands, Grand Beginning Divine Lands, Grand Essence Divine Lands, and Grand Ultimate Divine Lands. The vastness of the 9 Great Divine Lands was incomparable to that of ordinary prefectures. Every continent was like a giant world. Both the spirit energy and the fortune they gathered were far superior to the ordinary continents of Spirit Realm. The 9 Great Divine Lands had always been occupied by the top 9 divine sects of the 72 profound sections. Among the 72 orthodox profound sects, the biggest reason why the top 9 could be called divine sects was because they occupied the 9 Great Divine Lands. The 9 divine prefectures had always been the core of the Spirit Sea realm. The 72 profound gates, as well as many aristocratic clans and sects, were constantly thinking of killing their way back into the 9 Great Divine Lands. Xingqian School was inherited from Hunyuan Xingqian School. Originally, Hunyuan Xingqian School was the supreme overlord of Tai Chi Divine Prefecture. However, as the sect changed, it had no choice but to withdraw from Tai Chi Divine Prefecture after its decline. Qin Feng frowned. The 9 Great Divine Lands were enormous. Other than the 9 Great Divine Sects, there were also many ancient families and sections. Red Lotus entering the 9 Great Divine Lands was like finding a needle in a haystack. It was extremely difficult to find his whereabouts. I wonder why that little girl came to the 9 Great Divine Lands. Qin Feng smiled bitterly. However, that little girl's aura is normal, so she shouldn't be in any danger. Moreover, she's probably already awakened the abilities of the Bloody Empress, so she shouldn't be any weaker than an ordinary king. She should be able to protect herself. His eyes flashed with a strange light. Seeing that the black-clothed young man on the throne was deep in thought, the elder of the Azure the Arch took out a roll of cloth from his sleeve. Sectmaster, this is the latest ranking list of the sects in the Spirit Sea realm that we bought from the Spirit Treasure sect according to your orders. This is a version that they have yet to release. This time, we spent a lot of effort and also gave you face before they were willing to sell it. The Azure the Arch elder looked pained. Xingqian School had spent a lot of treasures on this scroll of light purple cloth. Those information dealers from the Spirit Treasure sect were too good at taking advantage of loopholes. Qin Feng looked up and waved his sleeves. The faint purple cloth in the Azure the Arch elder's hand appeared in his hand. The Azure the Arch elder's hands were empty. In the next moment, he was shocked. This sect leader's control of space-time was truly terrifying. Qin Feng glanced at the lavender cloth and opened it. Leading the way were 10 pale, golden names of sections. The rankings of the majority of the 72 mysterious sects had already changed. It was because the 10 great divine sects had undergone great changes. In the past, it was common knowledge that the top 10 divine gates were the Heavenly Luo sect, Divine Might sect, Heavenly Spirit sect, Great Supreme sect, 8 Desla Hall, True Martial sect, Burning Sky Valley, Battle God sect, Emperor Shi sect, and Creation sect. Among them, the Creation sect, Emperor Shi sect, and Battle God sect had always been at the top of the rankings. They were firmly ranked in the Primeval Divine Continent, Great Change Divine Continent, and Windpool Divine Continent. This was because these 3 sects were rumored to be the orthodoxies of 3 earth-shattering, peerless existences. Each of them had the support of an extraterrestrial god sect. The Creation sect was rumored to have originated from the primordial creation Taoist. That Taoist was a top-notch existence even among the Taoists born in the primordial era. He was said to be able to compete with the first primordial chaos Taoist. The Emperor Shi sect originated from one of the 3 primordial sovereigns, Emperor Shi. The origin of the Battle God sect was also very famous. The Battle God Taoist was a battle maniac in the primordial era. His battle prowess was unparalleled in the primordial era. His strength was even more earth-shattering. The 3 sects basically had a true god born in every era. The extraterrestrial god sect strength was not weaker than the Eastern Wilderness god sect. They were ridiculously strong. These 3 sects did not change much. Only the first, second, and third positions had changed slightly. According to the news obtained by the Spirit Treasure sect, the Emperor Shi sect had an empress comparable to a master god in this generation. Thus, they had surpassed the Creation sect, which was originally ranked first. In the Creation sect, the Creation sect's 3 ancestors had come out of seclusion and fought with the Empress. In the end, the Spirit Treasure sect received news that the Empress had won. The Creation sect's 3 ancestors were the 3 peerless boundary emperors born in the 9th era of the primordial era. These 3 boundary emperors were not to be underestimated. They were not ordinary boundary emperors. They were peak boundary emperors, only half a step away from the emperor realm. In the primordial era, they were earth-shattering, peerless existences. The remaining 7 divine sects were the Heavenly Net sect, Divine Might sect, Heavenly Spirit sect, Greater One sect, 8 Direction Hall, True Martial sect, and Finchen Valley. Although the Heavenly Net sect, Divine Might sect, Heavenly Spirit sect, and 8 Direction Hall also had peerless experts, they were pushed down. In their place were a few secluded sects that kept a low profile. Among them, 2 of the top 10 evil sects occupied 2 spots. Not to mention the primordial Netherworld Tao and primordial Evil Spirit Tao. The Spirit Treasure sect pointed out that the primordial Netherworld Tao and primordial Evil Spirit Tao seemed to have given birth to 2 mysterious, peerless evil emperors. They were also mysterious experts, born in the primordial era. Qin Feng was a little surprised. Although the primordial 10 paths were not one of the 72 mysterious sects, their foundation was not inferior to any of the 72 mysterious sections. They had always been operating in the dark and were the leaders of the unorthodox sects. With the birth of the evil emperor, the following 800 unorthodox sects would probably cause a storm. In addition to the 2 spots occupied by the primordial 10 paths, there were also peerless experts born in the Dragon Tribe. The 5 Seas were about to be reunited. To Qin Feng, this was not good news at all. The 5 Seas held an extremely important position in the Water Veins' fate. If he only wanted to attain the Water Veins' innate divine position, perhaps Qin Feng's current fate was not too far off. If he wanted to attain the position of the Water Veins' chief god, he would have to obtain the acknowledgement of the Dragon Tribe and many other sea race experts in the 5 Seas. However, this was not the most serious matter. Furthermore, the Savage Wastelands Demon God Temple was one of the 10 strongest factions. The Godly Temple of the Wildlands was also a power that was not part of the 72 mysterious sections. This time, according to the information obtained by the Spirit Treasure sect, not only did the Wildlands demon race give birth to many old monsters, there were also some ancient demon gods that were fighting for the position of Beast Emperor. Beast Emperor, corresponding to the Great Emperor. It corresponded to the fifth stage of the Heaven Realm, the fifth step of the Great Emperor Realm. Once a Beast Emperor appeared, it would be an abnormally huge disaster to the spirit domain around the Wildlands, especially since Xingqian School had occupied many spirit mountains and blessed lands in the Wildlands. Their territories intersected with the Wildlands the most. The Spirit Treasure sect predicted that Xingqian School would bear the brunt of the Beast Emperor's destruction. When Qin Feng saw this line, his face turned gloomy. Chapter 1287. Qin Feng followed his gaze and looked down. The 72 mysterious sects were all undergoing changes. There were already 7 or 8 sects that had been silently annihilated. The remaining dozen sects were also on the verge of collapse. For example, the Bustling sect around the Realm of Stars and the Xian sect in the Snow region. These 2 sects were originally at the bottom of the 72 mysterious sections. Now, they were confirmed to be the first from the bottom and the second from the bottom. However, Xingqian School's ranking didn't drop. Instead, it rose from the 10th place to the 12th place. According to the evaluation given by the Lingbao sect, this sect had 2 quasi-emperors in charge. For a short period of time, it was as stable as Mount Tai and was the leader of the surrounding provinces. 2 quasi-emperors. Besides Qin Feng, the other one was obviously Wang Daoyi. Besides, Qin Feng looked at the other few branches of Lineage of Star, Sun Moon Sword sect, Tianliang sect, and Hunyuan sect. According to Lingbao sect's description, the Sun Moon Sword School and Tianliang sect seem to have made some big moves recently. The 2 sects have been making a lot of moves recently, and the upper echelons were in constant contact with each other. It seems like they want to merge. Generally speaking, there were many undercurrents in the Spirit Sea realm recently. Many ancient experts were thinking of ways to plunder enough luck, waiting to break through to the God realm. To the Star sect, the greatest danger at the moment was probably still in the wilderness. In Gong Ao, Qin Feng's face darkened slightly. Gong Ao had always been in the Eastern Wilderness Divine Treasury, and he would probably come out soon. With this person's cultivation and the prestige he had established in Xingqian School, if he returned to Xingqian School and made a ruckus, the Xingqian School that Qin Feng had built up with great difficulty would fall into chaos again. I must have the ability to suppress Gong Ao before he returns. At this moment, Qin Feng realized that even though he had become a quasi-emperor that he had never dared to imagine before, his strength was still not enough. Even if I don't become a martial emperor, I must reach peak quasi-emperor within a short period of time. Qin Feng calculated in his heart. It was easier said than done to advance from a newly advanced quasi-emperor to a peak quasi-emperor in such a short time. Even if one had the creator space to analyze the precepts, without hundreds of years of cultivation, one would not be able to comprehend the next water-type heaven rank precept. At the quasi-emperor realm, every step was extremely difficult. Every time he comprehended a new heavenly law, the difficulty of comprehending the next one would increase exponentially. Actually, there was still a way. As long as Qin Feng harvested that wave of world origin power from the Star River continent, he would be able to comprehend the 14th water-type heavenly law in a short time. However, in this way, the potential of the Star River continent would be greatly wasted. As for the Star River continent, Qin Feng's original plan was to invest in it for the long term, not for the short term. Qin Feng really couldn't bear to give up the bountiful rewards in the future. He raised his head slightly and saw that Elder Qing Di was still standing at the side. Qin Feng waved his hand. "Elder Qing Di, you may leave." After saying that, Qin Feng called out to Elder Qing Di again. "I need to go into seclusion for the next 6 months. If you encounter any major issues, you can ask Senior Brother Wang Daoyi. If there are any tasks that you can't handle, you can ask the Azure Sea Dragon King and the Holy Water Elder. With my orders, they will listen to you." "Yes." Elder Qing Di nodded. He took a deep breath. Mobilizing a quasi-emperor and a king. How much authority was that? Elder Qing Di exited the Lingxiao main hall with excitement. Countless stars circled around the central throne. Qin Feng's eyes flickered with a strange light. Advancing to a peak quasi-emperor in a few months was undoubtedly a fool's dream for most quasi-emperors. However, with the creator space, Qin Feng could make the impossible possible. Normal cultivation was to follow the prescribed order. However, if he used the creator space, it would be stealing. How could normal cultivation speed compare to the huge profits of stealing? However, stealing generally carried a huge risk. If he rashly entered an unknown world and encountered a master god above the 16th level, he would obviously not end up well. However, with a strong enemy nearby, the domain of stars could be destroyed at any time. Qin Feng had to take a gamble. The space-time in the main hall fluctuated slightly, and his figure instantly disappeared. Space-time power? Just as Qin Feng operated the power of the creator space and disappeared, on a huge mountain peak hundreds of miles away from the Lingxiao main hall, Wang Daoyi suddenly opened his eyes in the Dao Palace, and a strange light flickered in his eyes. Wang Daoyi's eyes flashed with a trace of envy when he sensed the faint yet extremely powerful energy fluctuation. After a while, his expression returned to normal, and he thought to himself, "Traveling through space-time, huh? Unfortunately, my divine kingdom is still a little bit away from being promoted to the reincarnation master god space, but it will be soon. Since Qin Feng has promised me to open up the Netherworld Mansion in many provinces, I will definitely be able to promote my divine kingdom to a master god space with the enhancement power of the Netherworld Mansion. It's a pity that there's only one domain of stars, but it doesn't matter. Qin Feng has already made an alliance with me. I will help him conquer the other provinces, and he will allow me to open up the Netherworld Mansion. One day, with the birth of billions of Netherworld ghost kingdoms, I will become a reincarnation master god." Wang Daoyi's eyes flickered with different colors. "However, before that, I will first refine the food path of the two-dimensional abyss and turn it into the first Netherworld kingdom. I will take this opportunity to advance to the 5th stage, the Great Emperor Realm." Wang Daoyi's eyes flickered. The food path of the two-dimensional abyss was extremely deep and mysterious. Like the endless blood river, it possessed an extremely powerful power and was even taboo. Since ancient times, experts who understood the food path of the two-dimensional abyss were few and far between. The food path of the two-dimensional abyss was a famous taboo land. Even if a demon god entered it, they would most likely die. However, Wang Daoyi was an exception. He had a fortuitous encounter in the immemorial era and successfully escaped from it. He had grasped some of the most fundamental secrets of the food path of the two-dimensional abyss. In these 10 reincarnations, many of Wang Daoyi's plans revolve around the food path of the two-dimensional abyss, a famous taboo land. His figure flashed, and a strange, gloomy energy silently permeated his body. In the next moment, he seemed to have penetrated through time and space, entering a strange and gloomy area that seemed to be filled with endless darkness. This was a forbidden land for living beings, the food path of the two-dimensional abyss. It was also the place where the spirit sea realm digested the gloomy energy of all living beings. It was also the home of all living beings in this world. The gloomy energy here was so dense that it could not be dispersed. It formed many dead souls' abyss with countless wandering spirits. It was different from the endless blood river, which was boundless. In the depths of this dark and boundless area, the dead souls' abyss seemed to be divided into many levels. All kinds of strange and gloomy living beings lived in it. In each level, there seemed to be an abnormally strong existence entrenched in it. The strongest existence among them had a gloomy aura that seemed to be boundless and terrifying. When Wang Daoyi suddenly appeared, he seemed to have merged with the aura of the food path of the two-dimensional abyss. It was flawless and did not alarm any living beings. An aura that was not inferior to a great emperor was born from the interaction. Furthermore, it was getting denser and denser. Chapter 1288. In the depths of the boundless void, chaos flowed, sometimes colliding, sometimes rolling, setting off monstrous waves of chaos, sometimes turning into storms that wreaked havoc everywhere. I didn't expect it to be a world that's about to be destroyed. Around a huge gray world nebula, a black-robed youth holding a crystal-like longsword walked out of the indistinguishable chaos. He could walk in the chaos of the boundless void. If this scene were to be spread out, it would be horrifying. The chaotic energy was boundlessly violent and could melt everything. Even a demon god's body would be melted if he stayed in the chaos for too long. He was actually walking in the boundless chaos as if he was taking a stroll in the park. One could be sure that this was a super existence that ordinary people could not imagine. What was strange was that when he slashed with his sword, the ancient chaos was cut open like tofu, revealing a dry passage in a long river that was like rolling waves. In his other hand, he held an ice-blue bead. The icy blue bead seemed to have a mysterious connection with the enormous crystal wall in the primal chaos. This black-robed figure was none other than Qin Feng, who had used the Lord God's space to follow the clues. This time, he used his real body. The pearl in his hand was none other than the sea god's heart that he had obtained from the Sky River evil ancestor. Following the water-type foreign world rules contained in the sea god's heart, he found the original world coordinates of the sea god's heart from the chaos. Looking at the pearl in his hand, the black figure's eyes flickered in the chaos. This pearl had an extraordinary origin. It was formed by the remnant soul of a fallen god from another world. The remnant soul condensed its last divine position and divinity. Through the analysis of the Lord God's space, its owner was a weak divine power deity, Idas, the goddess of spring and peace, from another world. According to the last memory of Ida's remnant soul, the other world was called the Pharaon continent. Many powerhouses were able to ignite their godly fire after their cultivation reached the legendary realm and become deities. Deities were divided into weak divine power, medium divine power, high divine power, great divine power, and even great divine power, the god of creation, according to the amount of their faith radiation. Idas was the god of spring, water, and peace. Her divine domain had tranquil areas, springs, pools, peace, and waterfalls. It seemed that he was unlucky to have run into the battle formations of the many deity systems in the other world. He got sucked into the battle and became a sacrifice. As for why it had appeared in the spirit sea realm, it seemed that during the great war between the divine systems, a crack had appeared in the crystal wall and it had been blown out of the other world. It had drifted there and happened to encounter the Sky River evil ancestors' divine kingdom. It had been swept into the heavenly river evil ancestors' divine nation and obtained by him. Qin Feng muttered to himself as if he was looking at the huge world in front of him. In the other world, their strength was not particularly strong. There were a few huge god systems, and the strongest god system master was only a great divine power. A great divine power was similar to the realm of quasi-emperors in the universe. The greater divine power above that was the master god realm. The Pharaon continent was not the only continent in the Pharaon world. There were also a few other large continents, such as Kalatu. However, it was rumored that the only greater divine power was the god of creation, Io. In Ida's memory, after creator Io created the continent, he seemed to have fallen and turned into the forces of light and darkness. His divine power belonged to the gods. My luck is not bad. Qin Feng smiled as he looked at the changing world nebula in the other world. It was as if he had found a delicious hunter, and his eyes were full of surprise. In this world, belief was the law of the divine path. There were very few primeval ancient gods, and many gods often fought because of their belief. The larger the land of belief, the stronger the god. If the belief declined, the power of the god would also decline. Although there were many great divine powers, quasi-emperors, in Qin Feng's eyes, they were a bunch of weaklings. As a quasi-emperor, he, who had comprehended the laws of heaven and earth, could easily defeat 10 weaklings of the same level of belief. He looked at the light blue pearl in his hand and raised his eyebrows. Just right. With this item, I have a stepping stone. I don't have to spend effort to pry open the Pharaon crystal wall. When encountering a powerful world, Qin Feng could only send his doppelganger to be a thief. When encountering the Pharaon world, there was no need for him to suffer at all. He could just charge in with his real body and rob it directly. The origin of this world was very strong, not weaker than the Star River continent. Moreover, Qin Feng was very interested in the mysteries of the various divine systems and gods. Moreover, if he could obtain traces of the operation of a once powerful world, it would be of great benefit to the development of the creator space. The other thing was the structure of the entire world. The structure of this world was very strange in Qin Feng's eyes. Other than the main material world, there were many other strange and interesting worlds. For example, the shadow plane, the underground abyss, the astral plane, the heavenly realm, and so on. But it was a once powerful world. Although some of the gods were pitifully weak, I can't force my real body to enter. I still need some medium to open the door. Within the primal chaos, Qin Feng smiled. His gaze landed on the azure-colored pearl in his hand. This was the best medium to sneak into the Pharaon crystal wall. This item originally belonged to the crystal wall and had the aura of the crystal wall's origin. It would definitely not be rejected or hostile. Qin Feng's eyes flickered, and a wisp of his doppelganger transformed into the extraterrestrial demon and merged with the blue pearl. The pearl spun in the chaos, and after a while, it turned into a stream of light and entered the crystal wall, quickly disappearing. Just as Qin Feng expected, the extraterrestrial demon was able to sneak in with the concealment of the native aura. Qin Feng sat cross-legged outside the crystal wall and sensed the extraterrestrial demon from afar. A few days later, he sensed that the extraterrestrial demon was growing stronger. There seemed to be other intermittent pleas, prayers, and even the power of faith coming. It seems that it has bewitched many people. In the chaos, Qin Feng opened his eyes and smiled when he sensed this change. The extraterrestrial demon's ability to bewitch people was above that of demons. Obviously, the extraterrestrial demon had gradually adapted to the laws of heaven and earth of the Pharaon continent under the cover of the heart of the sea god. After absorbing the power of faith, it grew rapidly. In a place like this that was filled with the power of faith, the extraterrestrial demon was like a fish in water. A powerful figure of the path of faith once said, "Gods were demons, and demons were gods." There were two sides to the same coin. This was not wrong. Many ancient gods who had gone far on the path of faith would even take the initiative to create extraterrestrial demons to purify their faith or to conquer other worlds. Chapter 1289. In the chaos, there was no daylight. In the blink of an eye, half a month had passed. In this half a month, Qin Feng sensed that more and more extraterrestrial demons had infiltrated Pharaon, and the corresponding gathering power was getting stronger and stronger. It was like a rolling snowball. That kind of speed was astonishing. Qin Feng had originally thought that it would take a few months. He did not expect that in just half a month, he would be able to gather enough power to open the door to the extraterrestrial realm. In the chaos, in half a month, Qin Feng stood up for the first time. He smiled slightly, and a black door of light appeared behind him from the chaos. It was connected to the deepest part of the creator space, where the dark abyss was located. In the abyss, countless demons surrounded the ancient evil tree and spread their wings. Rich and extremely evil power spread out from the door, as if it was going to pollute the endless chaos. For this invasion, Qin Feng had specially hatched an army of millions of demons. Although the army of millions of demons did not seem like a lot, as the vanguard to collect flesh and evil power, they were enough to open a door for Qin Feng's real body to enter. However, before this, Qin Feng would not immediately send out the army of demons. He still needed to continue strengthening the power of the extraterrestrial demons. The extraterrestrial demons were not only the vanguard of the bridgehead, but they could also help him gather all kinds of information about the other world and even the rules of the world. It would be best if they were not discovered by the gods of the other world. If the extraterrestrial demons could occupy the depths of the souls of many living beings in the prime material world, Qin Feng would not even need to do anything. He would be able to reverse the situation and win without a fight. However, these newly hatched demons needed to gradually adapt to the rules of heaven and earth in this crystal wall system. Demons flew out of the creator space one by one. Under the concealment of the power of the creator space, they quietly entered the periphery of the crystal wall system. Here, they could bathe in the strange rules of the crystal wall system and slowly adapt. They could also comprehend the different flow of time. 2 months later, Qin Feng opened his eyes. Have I been discovered? Qin Feng sensed that the extraterrestrial demons, who had an unusually strong connection with him, were being purified in small patches. It was a pure purification of light energy. Such pure power of light, it should be Luo Shanda from Pharaon world, the god of dawn, the king of light. Qin Feng's expression changed slightly. The god of radiance, the lord of dawn, who wielded the origin power of light. He was one of the few great divine powers among the gods. This kind of great divine power of light was indeed extremely sensitive to beings like the extraterrestrial demons, who relied on the power of darkness to breed themselves. However, compared to the rate at which the extraterrestrial demons were spawned, this purification rate didn't seem very efficient. In fact, Qin Feng could still wait for a few more months. However, for Qin Feng, now that the extraterrestrial demons had been exposed, there was no need to wait any longer. Luo Shanda, I'll fight you in a bit. Let's see if your light divine power is stronger, or if my light god slaying technique is stronger. Lord God Space, open a gate of heaven and earth and establish the abyss. Demon engineers, prepare to attack. Long prepared, Zhang Xian issued a series of orders. In the divine light above his head, the changing shadow of the Lord God Space began to rotate slowly, and a trace of mysterious power entered the crystal wall system. A huge resistance came from the crystal wall system. It was the instinctive protective power of the crystal wall system, which repelled the entry of foreign power. However, at that moment, the power of the extraterrestrial demons spread out from the crystal wall system, with the traitor leading the way and the Lord God Space's mysterious power that could penetrate all things and penetrate space and time. Part of the crystal wall system structure was distorted. Kaboom! Rolling chaos vitality surged in. At the same time, the extraterrestrial demons within the vast crystal wall system drew in strands of the most evil power of heaven and earth, which surged into the crystal wall system. A huge, distorted structure was formed on the crystal wall system. It was as if a huge pustule had formed on the crystal wall system. Countless demon eggs were growing in the pustule, absorbing the origin of evil in heaven and earth to hatch these demon eggs. It was a very standard demon invasion model. In his previous life, Qin Feng had operated many demon invasions, but most of them were the lairs of the various ancient sects of the Linghai continent. This was his first time invading and polluting such a huge world. Polluting such a huge world. It's quite exciting just thinking about it. The corners of Qin Feng's eyes flashed with traces of excitement. He was excited, but in the Pharaon world, the gods' expressions were extremely ugly. While the gods were aghast, they could only sense that a huge pustule had appeared on the periphery of the crystal wall system. It was constantly absorbing the vitality of all things in the crystal wall system, plundering all the rules in the crystal wall system to grow. At that moment, the gods of the 3 camps within the crystal wall system, the demon lords of the abyss, and the many powerful devils in the hell of Bador all looked into the depths of the firmament. What the hell is that? How can the extraterrestrial crystal wall system give birth to such a strange thing? Evil, an extremely evil power. It's similar to a demon's aura. Is the demon lords of the abyss plotting something? In the pantheon, the gods of many pantheons appeared one after another. Their gazes fell on the strongest existences close to the great divine power level. The sun god Horus Re, the dwarf god Moradin, the elven god king Corellon Larishan, the elven queen Angris, the god of light Loshanda, and the lady of magic Mistra. These were all extremely powerful existences in the pantheon. There was a lot of discussion in the hall. Many gods suspected that this was a big move by the abyssal lords of the abyss. They thought that the abyssal lords were unwilling to accept their previous failure and were about to invade the main world again, competing with the gods for the ownership of the main material world. The few greater divine powers were mostly suspicious. The last time the abyssal lords invaded was only a few hundred years ago. Many abyssal lords had been defeated and had retreated. It was impossible for them to regroup so quickly. Moreover, the area around the crystal wall system emitted an extremely evil aura. Ordinary abyssal lords, even the current lord of the abyss, Wolf Spider Miska, did not have such an ability. If Wolf Spider Miska had such an ability, the main material world would have long become the territory of the abyss. At that moment, a few more beams of divine light appeared in the pantheon. Two goddesses appeared on two seats near the pantheon platform at the front. These two goddesses were two primeval ancient gods born in the crystal wall system at the beginning of time. The primeval goddess of the night, Shar, and the primeval goddess of the moon, Serene. The two goddesses had peerless appearances and simple divine powers. However, in terms of strength, although the two primeval goddesses were born in the most ancient era and were the leaders of the gods at the beginning of time, they were very weak. The primeval goddess of the night, Shar, could barely be considered a high-tier divine power, while Serene was even worse, only a mid-tier divine power. There were many reasons for this. However, this phenomenon was indeed very strange. It was a strange phenomenon that only occurred in the Farron continent. The primeval ancient gods were actually so weak. In terms of strength, many of the gods were stronger than the two primeval goddesses. However, in terms of knowledge, the gods were not as knowledgeable as the two primeval ancient gods born at the beginning of time. The gods all talked at once, but they could not come to a conclusion for a long time. However, the aura emitted by the abyss formed by the pustules was extremely terrifying and tyrannical. Although the gods had some guesses, they were afraid and worried, but they did not dare to go in their true bodies. Seeing the arrival of the two goddesses, the elven queen, who had always been on good terms with Serene, could not help but ask the goddess of the moon. Goddess of the moon, you are the primeval god of creation. I wonder if you know about the existence born in the periphery of the crystal wall system. Do you know what kind of strange existence it is? The words of the god from the Pantheon Temple could not escape Qin Feng's eyes. He sneered in his heart. He was confident that in less than half a year, he could beat these weak and ignorant country bumpkins to the point where they would not even know which way was north. Chapter 1290. In the depths of the crystal wall system, in the bottomless abyss. At this time, the demon lords of the various layers of the bottomless abyss were also guessing the origin of the demon abyss that suddenly appeared in the depths of the crystal wall system. Most of them suspected that it was the work of a powerful demon lord. It could be the mother of chaos, or the former demon prince, Wolf Spider Miska, or the current demon prince, Demogorgon. In the eyes of many demon lords, the mysterious nest that was born in the crystal wall system was clearly a replica of the bottomless abyss. The rich power of evil in the world was really the same as the bottomless abyss. This made many demon lords greedy. When they were ready to make a move, they were also a little afraid. The existence that could create such a huge abyss must be a peerless existence whose strength was not inferior to a greater divine power. However, not all the demon lords were puzzled. Some had already chosen to take action. They took the initiative to send a clone to approach and test the dark abyss above their heads. In the depths of the dark abyss, the structure was similar to that of the bottomless abyss. It absorbed the evil of the world and the obscure power. It was rapidly breeding layers of abyssal space. Countless demon eggs in the layers of abyssal space absorbed the rules of heaven and earth in this crystal wall system. They adjusted and bred demons that were most suitable for the entire environment. In the first layer of the abyss, this was the blue abyss. Endless seawater crashed. Qin Feng chose this place to build his palace. He used the precious time when the abyss invaded, and he was trying his best to adapt and even analyze the rules of heaven and earth in this world. On the throne in the depths of the blue abyss, countless blue demon eggs were floating in the seawater. Young deep-sea demons had hatched and were playing and fighting in the seawater. They had blue skin and streamlined bodies. They were not as ugly as their counterparts in the bottomless abyss. Instead, they had a hint of elegance, as if they were born messengers of the sea. Their wings had dragon scale-like scales, strong and powerful. They were born to control the seawater. They were still in the form of little demons. Above them were great demons, demon lords, and demon monarchs. On the throne, a black-robed figure was motionless like an ancient god. Above his head was the door to the dark abyss. The black-robed figure on the throne seemed to release the aura that was suppressed bit by bit. Soon, he broke through the king realm and entered the boundary emperor realm, great divine power. Qin Feng opened his eyes. There was a trace of joy in his eyes. The opportunity to verify the laws of water in several realms was not something that ordinary quasi-emperors could have. The gains he had made in the past half a month were definitely comparable to 1,000 years of seclusion in the Spirit Sea realm. Countless icy blue divine halos flowed around him. If necessary, he could advance to become a water-type great divine power at any time in this realm. From the memories of Edis, the god of spring and peace's remnant soul, there seemed to be quite a number of powerful water-type gods in this world. If I could devour their souls and divinity. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a strange light. There were many divine systems in the gray space, and there were many mixed gods. These gods were born because of faith, and they were also destroyed because of faith. Qin Feng's main target was the water elemental goddess Styxia, one of the 4 elemental ancient gods of earth, water, wind, and fire. Next was the ocean goddess Umberlee and the winter goddess Oler. As for the other gods, such as the lord of the deep sea and the goddess of spring water, they were the weakest. However, Qin Feng decided not to make a move against the gods of the pantheon for the time being. The world was mainly divided into 3 camps: the pantheon, the abyss, and the 9 hells. The gods of the pantheon were strong, but they all cherished their lives. As long as Qin Feng did not make a move against the prime material plane for the time being, the gods of the pantheon would most likely not come rashly to die. The abyss was where the demons lived, and the power of the demon lords was not inferior to that of the gods of the pantheon. In terms of strength, the divine power of the abyss could be said to be the strongest of the 3 camps. According to Qin Feng's understanding of the past half a month, the abyss and the 9 hells were currently at war. Both sides were on the side of evil, and, as the saying went, a mountain could not accommodate 2 tigers. The 2 sides were fighting to their heart's content. It was said that they had been fighting for tens of thousands of years. It was common knowledge that in terms of numbers, the devils of the 9 hells were not even 1/10 of the demons of the abyss. But in reality, even after 10,000 years of fighting, the demons had yet to destroy the 9 hells. In Qin Feng's eyes, this was a rather strange matter. But in this crystal wall system, it was abnormally normal. The demon lords belonged to the chaotic evil faction, and their nature was chaotic. This prevented them from attacking time and time again. Usually, halfway through the journey, the demon lords would begin to fight amongst themselves due to their chaotic nature. By the time they reached the designated location, they would have lost 30% of their forces before even fighting with the devils of the 9 hells. When the real battle began, at least 20% of them would die because of the other side's tricks. In Qin Feng's eyes, the hearts of the powerhouses of this world were simply too weak. True powerhouses were able to control their nature and were flexible and unrestrained. They would not be influenced by their nature and be born into the good, evil, or chaotic factions. Qin Feng was also a demon, but his demonic nature had never been able to control his mind. It was his chaotic nature that allowed him to control the demonic path. Just a bunch of pitiful worms poisoned by their faith. Qin Feng shook his head. At this time, his expression suddenly changed. He reached out a hand and waved his sleeve. Several motes of watery light shot towards the dark abyss door above his head like meteors. Bam, bam. It seemed as if invisible light and shadow were fiercely clashing above the door. Accompanied by a charming and extremely pleasant voice, a red light descended from outside the tall dark door. She was a graceful beauty, her red lips carrying a trace of a forced smile. Curved horns extended from her forehead, and her jet-black hair was pulled back. Her eyes flowed with dangerous fiery lust. Wide wings stretched out from her back, and one could see knife-like claws at the joints. A flat and slender demon tail had a curved spike at the end, bringing this portrait of a beauty to a full stop. She wore an exquisite silk robe and a studded leather belt. In her hand, she tightly gripped a long whip made of fine gold spikes that could burst forth with sparks. She was trying to use her charming and sexy smile to hide the panic and fear in her eyes. Lord of the 570th floor of the underground abyss, succubus Queen Mechanut. On the throne of the deep sea, Qin Feng's eyebrows were playful. He looked at the succubus queen calmly and said faintly, "Why, the famous succubus queen is so nervous to see me." Chapter 1291. Mechanut cursed in her heart. Her nature was extremely lustful, and she was originally just an extremely ordinary succubus. She didn't get the title of succubus queen for a long time. Her methods weren't very honorable either. Instead, she used her beautiful body, went through countless transactions, and along with some schemes, she finally defeated her old enemy, Sammy Amor, the embodiment of depraved desires. Demon Prince Demo Kyogen's former succubus lover. Relying on Demo Kyogen, her powerful lover, she really stood firm in the position of succubus queen. But just like this woman's nature, she liked to get all kinds of novel feelings and experience unprecedented pleasure. From the beginning, she had never been loyal to Demon Prince Demo Kyogen. The moment she felt the appearance of the dark abyss, she keenly realized that an existence thicker than Demo Kyogen's thigh had appeared. Therefore, she couldn't wait to send a clone to test it out. To be honest, she had long had enough of the ugly and powerful two-headed baboon Demo Kyogen. It was just that she never thought that there would be such a terrifying existence in this newly born strange abyss. With a slight smile on her beautiful and sexy face, she looked charmingly at the king on the throne of the deep sea. "Your Excellency," Mechan said, "I know your intentions and thoughts. Put away your attitude. I have no interest in that low-level form of communication. As for your conditions, I can agree to them." This was the dark abyss created by Qin Feng. Qin Feng himself was also the ancestor of the heart demons. The thoughts of the succubus queen, Mechanut, could not be hidden from Qin Feng at all. Of course, in fact, he was not as noble as he said. In all fairness, the succubus queen, Mechanut, was definitely a stunner. She did have the capital to make any man move. But when he thought of the succubus queen's former lovers, Qin Feng felt a little nauseous. But he did not discriminate. The succubus queen's lustful nature was exactly what he liked. With a little training, she could become the demon lord of desire. Mechanut was a little choked and caught off guard. Before she came, she was ready to sacrifice herself. The succubus queen, who had always been confident in her beauty, was a little disappointed. She was even more unconvinced. Although that great being had agreed to her request and had clearly rejected her sacrifice, her heart was filled with the desire to conquer this unknown great being. Mysterious, powerful, and a figure that seemed to condense the beauty of all things. Compared to the demon prince, the two-headed baboon, Demogorgon, was both weak and ugly. The succubus queen was excited. The fiery red lust in her eyes burned to the extreme, making her mature and charming aura even more beautiful. Are you in heat? The deep-sea throne glanced at the seductive postures of the succubus queen and sneered. Is he really a pitiful creature controlled by desire? Succubi were creatures born from the endless desires of the abyss, and this succubus queen was an existence that used her desires to condense her godhead. Therefore, they were more powerful than ordinary succubi. Of course, their needs in certain aspects were much stronger than ordinary succubi. I'll let you feel the impact from the high-level world of desire. Qin Feng's eyes moved slightly, and an invisible force suddenly hit the excited succubus queen Mechanut. Heaven rank law, samsara of life. Ah, this is... The poor succubus queen didn't even have time to react and was immediately involved in the invisible impact. Not only the succubus queen's avatar, Qin Feng, with his peerless power, followed the connection between the avatar and the main body, penetrated the endless crimson abyss power, and directly found the succubus queen's body. On the 570th floor of the bottomless abyss, in the bright red palace, the succubus queen on the throne opened her red lips slightly, and a trace of fear flashed in her fiery red eyes. The next moment, silently, her soul was withdrawn and integrated into an invisible vortex. Billions of worldly desires rushed in, and in the blink of an eye, the succubus queen sank into it. On the deep-sea throne, a gloomy smile appeared on the corners of Qin Feng's mouth. With a thought, a part of the immemorial, emotionless path's inheritance disappeared. In terms of the control of desire, the emotionless path was definitely one of the best among the immemorial 10 paths. In Qin Feng's view, desire was not only a low-level physical desire, but should also include the pursuit of beautiful things, and even the deep study of the great Tao of heaven and earth. The succubus queen's ability to control desire was too low-level. The most bizarre thing was that the succubus queen was actually affected by the priesthood. In fact, Qin Feng appreciated the succubus queen's daughter more. On the first floor of the bottomless abyss, the Red Shroud overlord. However, the Red Shroud lady was not an ordinary vicious woman. The chaos of the abyss overlord did not manifest on her body, but her viciousness and heartlessness were not inferior. She simply sold her daughter to other demons. It was really awe-inspiring. Although this was the case, Qin Feng valued the Red Shroud lady more and more. She could be said to be an elite of the demonic path. With the evolution of the Dark Abyss, on the deep-sea throne, Qin Feng unlocked more and more power, and when he was close to the peak, the power of the law of samsara finally dissipated. At the same time, in front of the sea, the succubus queen, who stood out of thin air, also opened her beautiful red eyes that were swallowing and spitting out flame-like lust. At this time, she looked abnormally sober. Master! Unexpectedly, as soon as the succubus queen woke up, she knelt on one knee in front of the deep-sea throne. At this time, the succubus queen had a calm face. It was as if the hot flames of desire in the past could no longer affect her. After experiencing the impact of the billions of samsara formed by the common people, the succubus queen clearly knew how powerful the existence on the throne was. Especially the comprehension and control of the power of desire. It was simply shocking. The succubus queen Mechanut only felt that she seemed to have lived for tens of thousands of years in vain. It turned out that desire could be controlled, directly controlled. She was excited, feeling the strong divine power fluctuations of the divine spark in the depths of her divine soul. At this moment, she felt that as long as she returned to the bottomless abyss and meditated a little, she should be able to promote to a high-grade divine power. High-grade divine power. She didn't even dare to think about it before. Without enough living beings' desire, she had no chance to promote to a high-grade divine power. A high-grade divine power demon lord was a high-level existence even in the boundless bottomless abyss that spanned the multiverse. Very good, Mechanut, you didn't let me down. On the throne, Qin Feng looked indifferent. Next, I will give you a task. A smile flashed in Qin Feng's eyes. After a while, Mechanut left the dark abyss. On the deep-sea throne, Qin Feng looked at the departure of Mechanut, and his eyes flashed with inexplicable meaning. The next one is you, Demon Prince Demogorgon. In the bottomless abyss, generally, only the strongest demon lord could be crowned with the title of prince. The demon prince before Demon Prince Demogorgon was Wolf Spider Miska. In fact, Demon Prince Demogorgon and Wolf Spider Miska belonged to a special kind of demon, Tanari. They were created by the demon lord of the bottomless abyss after chaos and many demon lords. To be precise, it was a new demon born from a hybrid of various demons and mortal souls. However, compared with Wolf Spider Miska, Demon Prince Demogorgon was a discarded failure. Qin Feng's first goal was to devour the bottomless abyss and gain a foothold in this multiverse. He was too lazy to deal with those demon lords one by one and subdue them one by one. So he simply killed the strongest demon prince directly. Qin Feng had an intuition that made him excited. If he could devour the bottomless abyss, his comprehension of the abyss would take a big step forward. He would be closer to the realm where the heart demon was not dead and the true body was indestructible. His figure quietly turned into an invisible extraterritorial demon, quietly cut through the void, followed Mechanut, who had left not long ago, and silently entered the succubus queen's body. As Mechanut's avatar integrated into the main body, he also entered the depths of the bottomless abyss. Chapter 1292. The bottomless abyss was known as the endless levels. It was endless and suffocating terror. This was the home of the demons. Each level of the bottomless abyss had its own unique and terrifying environment. Apart from their harsh and bare natural forms, it was impossible to use one tone to cover all the diverse levels. There might be lakes with corrosive acid, poisonous smoke, caves with razor-sharp spikes, and scorching lava in this place. There are also some less deadly terrains, such as scorching salty deserts, poisonous breezes, and insect-infested plains. The bottomless abyss was the home of the demons dedicated to death and destruction. The demons in the bottomless abyss saw visitors as a source of food or entertainment. Some demons saw powerful visitors as potential recruits. Whether they were willing or not, they were caught in the never-ending war of the demons against the demons, the Blood War. Countless changes reflected the collection of all the ugliness, evil, and chaos. As the countless levels spiraled downward, it came down to the extreme brutality. Many demon lords lived in it, competing for the resources and treasures found in the infinite levels. After entering the bottomless abyss, the first thing to do was to enter the Styx. The Styx was extremely poisonous. If any god or demon fell into it, even a powerful divine power would die. After passing through the Styx, one would reach the top of the bottomless abyss, which was the first level of the 10,000 abyss plane. It was full of wastelands swept by the wind. The jagged stone mountains were hidden under the cover of groups of winged demons. In the past endless years, a depressing red sun bathed the entire level in extreme heat and dazzling sunlight. Dark clouds covered the plain, hiding the potential danger. Huge, deep pits spread all over this level went straight into the deeper levels of terror. This place was famous for the 1,001 secret palaces in the depths of the 10,000 abyss plane. This was also the transit place for many visitors in the multiverse, using the layers of teleportation doors in the depths of the secret palaces. People who jumped into them would soon find themselves in a connected level. Such deep pit teleportation arrays were also two-way. As this level was one of the main front lines of the Blood War, there were often demon powerhouses from various levels of the bottomless abyss. After entering this level, one was not far from the Broken Domain, which was the territory of the first Broken Domain Lady Red Shroud. The relationship between Macanthus and Red Shroud was extraordinary. They were mother and daughter. As for Lady Red Shroud's father, he was the demon lord of the 503rd level of the bottomless abyss, the Wind Demon King Pazuzu. However, Macanthus and Pazuzu weren't particularly good. Macanthus's close relationship with other demon lords was usually for only one reason: to satisfy her endless desire. Mekhin-Thed had given birth to countless children, most of whom were brainless, powerless, ugly, and disgusting monsters. Lady Red Shroud was more prominent. When passing through the first layer, Mekhin-Thed avoided the broken domain far away. Mekhinut was obviously unwilling to meet his most outstanding daughter. In fact, there was no kinship between demon lords, only benefits. Mecanthus S. Clone, Red Shroud as Red Shroud, Red Shroud as Red Shroud as Red Demon Red Shroud, as Red Shroud, as Red Shroud as Red Eyes, Red as Red Shroud. On the huge demon throne, she looked extremely beautiful. She had blood-red hair, blood-red lips, and her wings were like burning demon flames. Mekhinut has never sent her doppelganger out of the bottomless demon palace. She has always been hiding from the Dark Prince, Graz ZT. What happened this time that made her send out her doppelganger? Could it be because of the second abyss that was born outside the crystal wall? Red Shroud's beautiful eyes flickered with flames. The Dark Prince was one of the most powerful demon lords in the abyss. He had now become one of the 3 great kings of the bottomless abyss. Back then, Mecanthus had rejected the Dark Prince's courtship, offending the Dark Prince who boiled the paste. A strange glint flashed in her eyes as she disappeared from the demonic palace's secret room and flew toward the 570th floor. Bottomless abyss, 570th level. In the succubus demon palace, the succubus queen opened her eyes. After thinking for a while, she tore the void and flew toward the 88th level of the abyss. The demon Prince Demogorgon was an ugly monster with long snake-like arms, 2 baboon-like heads, reptilian legs, and a twisted tail. This demon king had a violent temperament. The dark blue water-like palace was just like his fiery and ferocious temper. It was as ruthless and tyrannical as the sea. In fact, this demon king, one of the 3 great kings of the bottomless abyss, was not as tyrannical as imagined. It was just that one of his 2 heads showed an abnormally tyrannical personality. In fact, the other head was calm and wise, and was proficient in all kinds of conspiracies and tricks. The 88th level was one of the few levels in the depths of the bottomless abyss that had a huge body of water. The water attribute demonic chi here was abnormally rich. The demon Prince Demogorgon's palace, Urgus Ready, was built on the saltwater swamp here. It was abnormally magnificent, like a giant city lying on the saltwater swamp. You're here. When Mekhin-Thed's figure appeared in Urgus Ready, a loud and demonic voice came from the demon palace. Mecanthus raised her eyes and smiled charmingly. In fact, Qin Feng, who was in Mecanthus' body at this time, could feel the succubus queen's nausea. It seemed that when she thought of the demon Prince Demogorgon's ugly body, the succubus queen had an urge to vomit. However, Mecanthus was forcibly suppressing this feeling. Qin Feng felt the fear and hesitation in her heart. Not only was she afraid that Demogorgon would sense her emotions, but she was also afraid that if she was abandoned by Demogorgon, she would be hunted to death by the Dark Monarch. She was even more afraid that Demogorgon would know that she had secretly gone to see Qin Feng in the second abyss. However, the succubus queen was naturally good at acting. She quickly sorted out the emotions in her heart and entered the demon palace with an incomparably natural expression. Her figure was graceful, and between her steps, there was all kinds of crazy seduction. In the center of the demon palace's throne, a huge monster looked at the succubus queen's extremely charming body. Lust and tyranny surged wildly, and a big hand like a viper swept over like lightning. The next moment, it wrapped around the succubus queen's body, which was caught off guard. Hee, your majesty, did you miss me again? The succubus queen's incomparably beautiful face had a fiery red color of lust. The expression in her eyes was natural, without any surprise. She was obviously used to Demogorgon's straightforwardness and did not have any sense of defense. However, in the next moment, her expression changed drastically. A pitch-black aura suddenly flew out from her body, and a black-robed figure suddenly appeared. Who is it? At the same time, The demon prince Demogorgon's furious voice suddenly sounded from above. Chapter 1293. Feeling the demon prince's earth-shattering anger, the succubus queen was aghast. Her eyes flashed, and when they landed on the black-robed figure, her expression changed. "It's you." Although the succubus queen couldn't recognize Qin Feng's appearance, that unique aura was unforgettable for her. Demon Prince, one of the three kings of the abyss, Demogorgon, a divine aura that could absorb the spirituality of all things emanated from the angry giant beast in the center, sweeping toward Qin Feng. The power of a great divine power was vast and shocking. Under the awe of this power, the succubus queen's body went soft, and she couldn't move. Demogorgon's power had an aura that could restrain the demon lord. Even those of the same level would be suppressed by it, let alone the succubus queen, who was one level lower. Too weak, Qin Feng shook his head, and the aura around him that far exceeded that of an ordinary great divine power was emitted. He pointed at the tentacle that cut through the air like a dragon snake. A strange power that could annihilate time and space suddenly froze it. Under this power, the demon prince, Demogorgon, who was known as one of the three strongest kings of the abyss, was like a weak baby. "You dare to look down on me? You will pay for your actions." The suppressed demon prince's two heads roared toward the sky, emitting an icy blue light. A huge evil wave of divine power emerged from the giant two-headed baboon's body. At the same time, rumble. Qin Feng felt an endless pressure from the surroundings of the abyss toward the giant two-headed baboon on the central throne. That was the will of the abyss. The two-headed baboon, Demogorgon, was recognized by most of the demon lords of the abyss. To a certain extent, it was the demon king, and it could mobilize the huge power of the abyss. The power of the abyss radiated across the multiverse and many worlds. It could be said to be extremely huge. Even the existence of a greater divine power couldn't directly contend with it. If an ordinary great divine power directly ran into the abyss to find trouble with the two-headed baboon without the protection of an existence like the Pantheon Temple, it would be no different from courting death. Qin Feng smiled faintly, and a formless brilliance flickered around him. The next moment, it turned into two streams of light that hit the two-headed baboon between its eyebrows. In an instant, the divine light in the two-headed baboon's four fierce eyes dimmed. Heaven rank law, reincarnation. This heaven rank law, condensed from the path of the heart demon, could be said to be very powerful against the gods and many demons. Within the divine light, the two-headed baboon's soul, which wasn't particularly tough, immediately fell into the great reincarnation millstone formed by billions of lives. Next, Qin Feng faced baboon. Kills or not? Qin Feng's eyes flickered. Demogorgon, demon lord. If he could get him to get his to the demon king, he could lead, would be able to could save a lot of the time. It will. However, Qin Feng felt that he was thinking too much. Demogorgon. Demiguz demonic demon demonic demon demus demon. Might as well kill him. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a trace of fierceness. Master, can you give him to me? Qin Feng turned around and looked at the slightly excited succubus Queen Mechanut. He saw the greed and desire in the queen's eyes. With a slight movement, Qin Feng guessed Mechanut's thoughts. You want to devour him? Yes, master. If I can devour this monster, my strength will be able to easily break through to the great divine power level and become one of the new kings of the abyss. Mechanut, the incomparably beautiful succubus queen, looked at the two-headed baboon, her eyes filled with the flames of greed. In that case, I'll leave him to you. If you fail to devour him, you should know the consequences. I don't keep trash under my command. Qin Feng's expression was cold as he glanced at the succubus queen. Mechanut's heart trembled. Compared to the temperamental Demogorgon, the demon prince with multiple personalities, perhaps this mysterious existence was more difficult to deal with. But in any case, Being able to devour the demon prince Demogorgon was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. She licked her dry lips and looked at the motionless demon prince who was like a stone statue in front of her. This monster had galloped on her body for many days and nights, but in the end, he would die in her hands. Qin Feng walked out of Urgus. This was the demon's stomach, the 88th layer of the saltwater swamp. Seriously speaking, it was a very fertile layer of the abyss. Although the abyss was known to have countless layers, most of them were barren. To be able to occupy the 88th layer of the saltwater swamp, it was Demogorgon's strength. At this moment, following the fall of the demonic Kogon root's soul, the will of the underground abyss lost the traction of the demonic Kogon root and completely dissipated. However, Qin Feng could still feel an inexplicable and strong hostility and rejection coming from the depths of the bottomless abyss. He knew that it would not be long before the numerous demon lords discovered his existence. However, Qin Feng also discovered that as the demon prince's aura gradually disappeared, the power of the will of the abyss seemed to have decreased. At the same time, the dark abyss control over the evil chi of heaven and earth increased. Qin Feng was deep in thought. Obviously, existences like the demon prince Demogorgon were the abyss transportation bell spirits. The loss of any one of them would be a huge loss to the abyss. It would cause the dark abyss to lose in the fight for the evil chi of all things in the world. Outside the palace, the light of the water was faint. The dark green saltwater swamp was like clear water, surrounded by clouds and mist for thousands of miles. The demon palace was hidden in the clouds and mist. Moreover, Qin Feng had only defeated the demon prince for a short time, so no other demons discovered him. Moreover, the demon guards here all knew that the demon prince had a violent temper and did not like to be disturbed when he was being intimate with the succubus queen. Most of the demon guards had left Urgus ready at this time. When Qin Feng walked out, the demon guards did not discover him. Qin Feng's next target was Orcus. The three great monarchs of the abyss were the demon prince Demogorgon, the dark monarch Graz, ZT, and the blood monarch Orcus. These three great monarchs represented the highest level of power in the abyss. Of course, in theory, there were two more ruthless characters, the Queen of Chaos and the first demon prince Obox Obo. However, the first demon prince Obox Obo had already been ambushed by the Queen of Chaos, leaving only an avatar hiding in a certain layer of the abyss. After the Queen of Chaos ambushed the demon prince Obox Obo, she was also heavily injured by the order and had no choice but to escape to the abyss to hide. In general, after the Dark Monarch and the Blood Monarch were eliminated, the remaining demon lords were a bunch of salted fish. Between the two demon lords, the Dark Monarch and the Blood Monarch, Qin Feng was more inclined towards the latter. As for the reason, he had to pick the soft persimmon. Orcus, the demon prince of the undead creatures, was one of the most powerful demons in the abyss. Orcus ruled a certain layer of the abyss. His domain was the wasteland of death. It was a dark world where death was hidden. Gray clouds shrouded everything in a hazy fog. The forest of death was filled with twisted black trees and barren swamps. Black mountains pierced the black sky. Chapter 1294. Abandoned cities and villages were hidden in the gray clouds. This was the world of the undead. No living creature could stay here for long. In the middle of the wasteland of death was a huge obsidian castle. There were countless translucent black stones with corpses on it. The castle spanned across a huge chasm. There were hundreds of tombs on the slope, and there was an underground city made up of graveyards. Most of the time, Orcus lived here. To be honest, Orcus did not like other demons calling him the Blood Tyrant. He preferred it when someone called him the Death Tyrant. He had never stopped his research in the field of death. There was a period of time when Orcus even had designs on Baal, the god of massacre, and Mirko, the god of death. He could be said to be a daring person. It was common knowledge that the Death Tyrants were not to be trifled with. Ban and Mirko were both greater gods. However, he did have the opportunity to obtain some of the death tyrants. However, he was unlucky. Before he had the chance to do so, Bal and Mirko fell one after another. In the end, crazy Sirik took advantage of it. Sirik was originally immortal. When he was promoted to a god, he happened to inherit the death tyrants of the death tyrants. He could be said to be a very lucky mortal. He was known as the Prince of Lies. His domain was murder, conspiracy, lies, deceit, and illusions. In reality, Sirik was a narrow-minded, self-centered, and extremely extreme god. He believed himself to be superior to all other gods and wanted nothing more than to become the king of all gods. However, this god did not have the power to match his ambition. For this reason, his church in Faerun crazily squeezed out believers from all the major countries. Compared to the demons, the reputation of this Prince of Lies church was not inferior. Because of this, he did not give up. He created an evil book called the Sirik Sutra. This book had a strange ability. Not only could it affect ordinary experts, it could also affect gods and drive them crazy. The Prince of Lies' original intention was to use this book to poison the gods. But unfortunately, this Prince of Lies shot himself in the foot. He was the first to become the victim. He was a mad god for a very long time, a lunatic. Orcus wanted to use this opportunity to take down that lunatic. After the gods defeated Sirik, he obtained a portion of Sirik's divine domain of death and became the new king of the dead. Kalimber had once been a close friend of Sirik, the Prince of Lies, and one of them was the Midnight Lady. The Midnight Lady is both Mistra and the goddess of magic. Seriously speaking, the king of the dead, Kalimber, was the former lover of the goddess of magic. At that time, the Prince of Lies devised a plot to permanently ruin the relationship between the king of the dead and the goddess of magic. All in all, Orcus was a miserable person. Time and time again, they had all died before they could achieve victory. As the king of the dead, he controlled the power of death and oversaw the fate of all the dead in the world. Kalimber was extremely powerful. He was a rare, greater divine power and was extremely close to a greater divine power. Orcus didn't dare to make a move on Kalimber. Therefore, he could only set his sights on the other demon overlord in the wasteland of death. Crow Queen. The Crow Queen was the lord of the death crows in the wasteland of death. She also controlled a portion of the death and death domain's divine power. Compared to the king of the dead, Crow Queen was no doubt a pushover. After swallowing the Crow Queen's power, Orcus obtained a portion of the power to control death and undead creatures as he wished. Orcus looked like an evil and fat humanoid creature. He had a pair of thick goat legs and a withered ram's head. His huge black wings fanned up stinky clouds of decay. He looked like both a living creature and an undead creature. His bloated body was like a rotten creature, while his head and red eyes were like an undead creature. A fat tail covered with spikes kept waving behind him. When Sheen Fang's inner demons probed the castle, the undead king and Ghoul King Dorison were hatching a new plot. Ghoul King Dorison was one of Orcus's most important servants. Dorison commanded the ghouls. Unlike the other ghouls, he stood straight, unlike the other ghouls who hunched their backs. His eyes shone with a pale green light, and he wore a luxurious robe and leather armor. He wore a crown of white bones and held a spine-shaped staff called the Staff of the Hungry Fawn. There was a skull at the top of the staff as a sign of respect to Orcus. His divine power was not weak, surpassing that of a weak divine power. He was one of the demon overlords with weak divine power. Qin Feng spread his inner demons into the Death Castle. The moment he appeared, the loyal Ghoul King with weak divine power was annihilated like ashes. Asterisk roar. Roar. Asterisk countless hunchbacked and ferocious ghouls roared fiercely. These loyal castle guards rushed towards the black-clothed youth like a tide. Asterisk bang. 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 Invisible lightning-like arcs of light swept across, and all the death guards in the castle were instantly turned into ashes under Orcus's gaze. The black-clothed youth seemed to have swept away a large amount of rubbish. The next moment, he looked at Orcus, who was on the throne. Faced with that cold and emotionless gaze, Even Orcus, who ruled over a large number of undead creatures in the bottomless abyss, couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Compared to the demon prince Demogorgon who had died at the hands of Cheen Foam, Orcus was much weaker. Although Orcus was one of the 3 demon overlords of the underground abyss, he wasn't just a little weaker. In terms of strength, the demon prince Demogorgon was the strongest of the 3 demon overlords. He had absorbed the power of a part of the prime material plane, and his 2 heads and multiple personalities were showing signs of merging. Even if Orcus and the Dark Overlord worked together, they could only fight to a draw with the demon prince. Orcus was slightly weaker than the Dark Overlord. Facing Cheen Foam alone, who could kill the demon prince Demogorgon, he was under great pressure. Asterisk rumble. Asterisk the will of the bottomless abyss seemed to have sensed the changes here. Terrifying thunderclaps rang out in the wasteland of death that was shrouded in gray clouds all day long. Orcus turned pale with fright. This existence in front of him had actually drawn out the will of the abyss. A hint of joy flickered in the corners of his eyes. With the protection of the will of the abyss, he might be able to kill and devour this powerful existence. However, the next moment his eyes became slightly dazed. The will of the bottomless abyss. Cheen Foam raised his head and glanced at it, smiling coldly. Above the dark abyss, where the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss were competing for the power of all things and the power of darkness, an indescribable, supreme will blasted into the bottomless abyss like a bolt of lightning, entangling with the abyss while as many of the great gods in the dark abyss looked on blankly. After the death of the demon prince, the will of the bottomless abyss had weakened considerably. At the same time, the dark abyss that he controlled was equivalent to plundering a part of the abyss power, and his strength had increased greatly. If the dark abyss was slightly inferior to the bottomless abyss before, the 2 were now on par. What's going on? Why is this new abyss entangled with the will of the bottomless abyss? At this moment, who knew how many gods couldn't wrap their heads around this? Chapter 1295. The 2 abyssal wills seem to be entangled and devouring each other. In the Pantheon Temple, the expressions of many gods with great divine power changed slightly. Many gods with great divine power showed a hint of worry on their faces. The boundless multiverse of Pharaon was able to maintain balance because the 3 camps had given birth to great beings. The Pantheon Temple's wills, the 9 Hells wills, the bottomless abyss wills. The 3 kept each other in check and barely maintained a huge balance. However, this 4th force had just appeared and actually gave birth to its own wills, and it wanted to devour the bottomless abyss wills. If they succeeded in devouring each other, whether it was the 2nd abyss devouring the bottomless abyss or the bottomless abyss devouring the 2nd abyss, it would be a disaster. The balance would definitely be broken. We must not let these 2 abyssal wills succeed in devouring each other. In a human god system, the great divine power sun god Horus Ray said in a deep voice. A huge divine aura that was above the gods swept through the Pantheon Temple. The 2 abyssal wills must not merge, or else there will be a behemoth above the Pantheon Temple and the 9 Hells. The elven god King Corellon Larishan, the elven god Queen Angress, the dwarven god King Moradin, the halfling god King Yudaha, the orc god King Grumsh, the god of light Luo Shanda, the mother goddess of the earth, and other great divine power existences all had serious expressions. In the wasteland of death, in the castle, honorable champion, Orcus, the undying king, is willing to submit to you. Orcus' chubby figure had already walked down from the throne and bowed in front of the black-clothed youth. He was extremely humble, and his unique ram head was already soaked in cold sweat. After witnessing Cheen Foam suppressing and trapping the bottomless abyss wills with his own eyes, this Death King, who was not very tough, was already scared out of his wits. Cheen Foam sneered. Demon lords were fickle existences. They were cunning and insidious, but they were also most afraid of death. However, this was also good. Orcus was one of the three kings in the bottomless abyss. He was also a good fighter. With a wave of his hand, a trace of the origin of the dark abyss appeared in his hand and formed an extremely complicated pattern, forming an ancient purple-black rune in midair. Buzz, buzz! Seeing the purple-black rune in the air, Orcus's face changed. He felt a pressure from the source of his bloodline. His huge body couldn't help but kneel on the ground. As the power of the dark abyss penetrated deep into the multiverse of the crystal wall, it slowly consumed the origins of the multiverse of the crystal wall and was now able to control many of them. This ancient rune was condensed from a wisp of the dark abyss's origin. A wise man submits to circumstances. Orcus, in the name of the Lord of the Abyss, I confer upon you the title of Lord of the Death Styx on the 98th level of the Dark Abyss. The purplish-black light turned into a stream of light and entered Orcus's forehead, while his expression was filled with fear, apprehension, and a trace of hesitation. Rumble! In the next moment, a thick purplish-black light appeared under Orcus. His body was nourished by the purplish-black light, and the demonic aura on his body became denser. In an instant, his body size increased by 3 times. Rumble! Thunder rumbled in the sky. Bang, bang, bang! Around the Death Castle, countless ghoul guard were turned into dust in the thunder. The will of the bottomless abyss was extremely furious. It was like an injured beast that was about to unleash its fury and kill this traitorous king. 3 sovereigns, 2 of them were dead, and the bottomless abyss was greatly weakened. In the war of devouring with the will of the dark abyss, they were at an absolute disadvantage. Rumble! A surging aura flew out from Orcus's body, and the extremely cold aura of death turned into pitch-black flames that drilled out of the monster's pores. An evil aura of death that far exceeded that of an ordinary great divine power soared into the sky. Under the huge black flames of death, the entire castle seemed to have turned into black ice. After a moment, Orcus opened his eyes and looked at his majestic body. He couldn't help but laugh with extreme excitement. What a powerful force! Is this the power given by the dark abyss? The loud voice was like thunder, and the gray clouds above the death wasteland seemed to have been reopened. It attracted the shock and horror of countless death guards. My lord, thank you for your generosity. Orcus feels really powerful. The huge monster with the goat's head knelt down on one knee, looking extremely pious. Although he had been bestowed with a trace of the origin of the dark abyss and had become the sovereign of death under the dark abyss, the more Orcus felt the earth-shattering power in the black-clothed man in front of him, the more fearful and fearful he was. This is a war of devouring between the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss. The more powerful the dark abyss is, the more powerful you, the sovereign of death under the dark abyss, will be. If you can incite a portion of the demon lords in the bottomless abyss to rebel, you will be rewarded and even become a throne in the dark abyss. 2 of the 3 sovereigns have been lost. Next, I will personally suppress the last dark abyss sovereign and complete the final devouring of the bottomless abyss. You should know what to do, right? Qin Feng looked calmly at the kneeling sovereign of death. Omnipotent Lord of the Abyss, your subordinate Orcus will definitely not disappoint you. Orcus suppressed his excitement, becoming a throne in the new abyss and becoming the king of countless demon lords. Just the thought of it made his bloodline, which was filled with ambition and desire for power, tremble. Qin Feng nodded, his figure disappearing in a flash as he headed straight for the dark abyss sovereign's territory. The new sovereign of death immediately crawled up from the ground and roared towards the sky. The tremendous roar was like the war drums of hell. Countless death guards were awakened from the barren land, charging towards the territories of other abyssal lords under his summons. At the same time, the bottomless abyss sovereign of death had fallen. 2 of the most powerful demon monarchs had successively fallen or surrendered. The bottomless abyss was at a disadvantage in the war of devouring the dark abyss. This worried the gods, but they also made preparations to stop the fusion of the 2 abysses at any time. The Dark Abyss sovereign, Graz ZT, was the only one of the three sovereigns who was more handsome. He was a tall, handsome demon with dark charisma. His skin was dark, and his eyes flickered with a demonic green light. Graz ZT liked to wear the clothes of an emperor. His pointed ears and yellowish fangs showed his race. Of course, the most striking feature was that this demon monarch had 6 fingers, and 6 toes. His mother, Sang Yi, was the demon lord of the 600th level of the bottomless abyss. She had extraordinary divine strength and was known as the mother of demons. She was boundlessly mysterious and powerful. Chapter 1296. The origin of the mother of demons, Sang Yi, was very mysterious. She had given birth to countless demons and monsters. It had to be said that the bottomless abyss was indeed chaotic. Those magnetic demon monarchs usually had countless partners, and each one was heavier than the other. Their partners were usually meat and vegetables, and there was no need to mention how ugly they were. For example, Mechanut had red shrouds, and Sang Yi was the same. Moreover, the demons and monsters she gave birth to were all based on group theory. The mother of demons, Sang Yi, gave birth to so many demons and monsters, but it did not originate from the strong needs of the demons. She was different from Mechanut. Her birth came from her own ambition. It was called a curve to save the country. In the chaotic era, many demon monarchs were just born in the bottomless abyss. Many demon monarchs were fighting for dominance over the bottomless abyss. At that time, those who dared to claim themselves as demon monarchs were all the strongest demons. That era was also the cruelest era. Once there was a demon monarch, no matter if it was a human, a god, or a demon, they would do everything possible to pull him down. Countless powerful demons fought until their brains were broken. Many powerful demons were killed or imprisoned. The demon tree Malgoris was defeated and imprisoned by Raisbrar Shore. An alliance of 7 demon monarchs under the leadership of Anstifer attacked Malgoris territory and finally exiled him. In the demon prison Darkwell, new demons were imprisoned for eternity. In the end, even Raisbrar Shore and Anstifer became one of them. But not all of the demons involved in it ended up with a tragic fate. In fact, it proved that Sang Yi was right to fight for dominance over the bottomless abyss. Sang Yi's plan was to give birth to countless demons and monsters. As long as one of the demons and monsters she gave birth to became a demon monarch, she would succeed. In fact, she did succeed. She did not become a demon monarch, but she became the mother of several demon monarchs. Most of those demons and monsters died young. They either died to their own brothers and sisters, or died in the extremely harsh environment of the bottomless abyss. Only a small portion of them became demon monarchs. The most famous one was the Dark Monarch, Grazti. He was even recognized as one of the 3 monarchs of the bottomless abyss. The rest of the more famous ones were the Lord of Sloth, Lupshio, the Lady of Carrion, the Queen of Shadows, Rixali, and the Chain Man, Frederick. Fekerick hid in his chains all day long, and no one could see his face clearly. Graz-ZT, the Dark Monarch, was a very romantic demon monarch. His handsome appearance and powerful strength made him very popular. He was not limited to humans, elves, demons, and gods. His lovers were all over the major races. But no matter how handsome he was, it didn't change the fact that he was a demon monarch. Usually, demon monarchs were cunning and treacherous, and Graz-ZT was especially good at selling out and betraying others. Qin Feng found the Dark Monarch Graz-ZT in one of the levels of the bottomless abyss. You seem to have known that I was coming for you a long time ago. Qin Feng appeared from the void and entered the Dark Monarch's Devil Palace. At this moment, the Dark Monarch wasn't the only demon lord in the Demon Palace. There were also several abnormally powerful demon lords. Shadow Demon Queen Rixali, Lady Fungus Zugmoy, and another demon lord, Rhine. The lineup was luxurious. The demon monarchs' expressions changed as they looked at the black-clothed figure that appeared from the void. Tearing through the void was an ability that many demon lords could do. Ordinary demons and legendary powerhouses could come into contact with some of the mysteries of the void after becoming gods or demon lords. They could then raise their divine thrones and establish their divine kingdoms. Perhaps it was the void demon domain. However, this black-clothed figure didn't just appear from the void. He seemed to have touched upon time and walked out from the long river of time. There was no sound. Just this alone was enough to make most of the demon lords in the demon palace sigh. Only the dark monarch could faintly feel the trajectory of the black-clothed figure's appearance. However, the dark monarch's expression became more and more solemn. From what he knew, it seemed that only peerless existences who had touched upon greater divine powers had this ability. Although he was inwardly wary, the dark monarch stood up and smiled. "Your Excellency underestimates me too much. You've killed and subdued 2 of the 3 demon monarchs of the bottomless abyss. If I still don't know, Graz ZT wouldn't be one of the 3 demon monarchs." "Very good. As expected of one of the 3 demon monarchs. Now, tell me your decision. Submit to the dark abyss, or choose to perish with the bottomless abyss." Qin Feng's expression was indifferent. The moment he said this, the expressions of many demon lords with bad personalities changed. For many demon lords who were used to abusing others, no one had ever said such words to them. Even one of the 3 demon monarchs of the abyss, Demogorgon, wouldn't speak to them like this. The Dark Monarch's great divine power aura was released, suppressing the many demon lords who were surging with rage. "Before these 2 choices, may I ask Your Excellency a question?" The Dark Monarch's expression didn't change, and a smile remained on his handsome face. Of course, Qin Feng's expression didn't change. If possible, he hoped to truly make the Dark Monarch submit and not kill him. The Dark Monarch was a valiant general who could deal with the gods and even the devils of the 9 hells. As for the Dark Monarch's expertise in betrayal, Qin Feng had plenty of ways to deal with him. "Who exactly are you, Your Excellency?" The Dark Monarch's tone carried a trace of doubt. "This monarch has traversed the multiverse and has seen and heard of many demon lords, gods, and devils in the abyss. However, I have never heard of Your Excellency. What kind of existence are you? Could you be one of the primordial demons of Obylis?" "That's not a question." Qin Feng smiled faintly and turned around, his gaze meeting the demon lord's complicated expressions of fear, shock, and confusion. His gaze landed on the Dark Monarch, Grazity. "However, I can answer your question." Qin Feng stood with his hands behind his back, looking at the demon lord around him. His voice was clear. "Although I am a demon, I am not one of the primordial demons of Obylis that flourished in the multiverse's ancient era. I am the demon of all demons." His eyes flickered with might and dominance. "Among the billions of demons, I am the demon ancestor, the primordial demon lord, and also the primordial demon." Chapter 1297. Ancestor of all demons, primordial demon lord, Dark Monarch Graz T, Shadow Fiend Queen Rixali, Lady Fungus, and the other demon lords gasped. Wasn't this an ancient demon lord that was born in the endless abyss? He looked at Qin Feng with a shocked expression. However, there was no doubt and disbelief in his eyes. However, the black-robed man in front of them had an ancient and mysterious aura that far surpassed the demon lord's aura. In fact, Qin Feng wasn't wrong. He had created the Dark Abyss, the home of countless demons. He was worthy of being called the Demon Lord. He was indeed worthy of being the Lord of all demons. Moreover, he wasn't just referring to demons. "Graz ZT, tell me your decision." This monarch is willing to submit. After a moment of silence, the Dark Monarch walked down from his throne and knelt down on one knee. Demon lords didn't have much integrity to begin with. Temporarily submitting to a powerhouse wasn't something they couldn't tolerate. They would follow whoever was strong. "Very well. This monarch accepts your submission in the name of the Abyss Lord and ancestor of all demons. I bestow upon you the title of Dark Monarch of the 108th level of the Dark Abyss. He slightly touched the origin of the Dark Abyss and intertwined his fingers. A strand of purple-black runes appeared and entered the Dark Monarch Graz's body. The Dark Monarch's expression changed, and he was about to flare up. However, in the next moment, a trace of joy flashed in his eyes, and purple-black light appeared from the depths of his body. That wisp of purple-black light entered the demonic core within his body, and the source of the demonic core increased dramatically. The demonic core grew larger at a speed visible to the naked eye, and it even turned purple-black. Rumble. An extremely dense dark force erupted from the Dark Monarch's body. The aura on his body rose steadily. Rumble. When he reached his limit, 2 pitch-black horns grew out of his head under the gazes of the numerous demon monarchs. At the same time, 2 dense darkness magic power broke free from his back, as if 2 pitch-black flames were growing out of his back, gradually transforming into 2 towering wings. In an instant, the dark force increased dramatically. So strong, the Shadow Demon Queen, Rixali, Madame Fungus, Zugmoy, and Rhine, who were the closest demon lords, could not help but take a few steps back when they felt this majesty. This enormous power of darkness was at least twice as strong as before. The Dark Monarch closed his eyes. At this moment, he felt a very close connection with one of the layers of another huge abyss above the crystal wall. He seemed to have become the creator of that level of the abyss, possessing the power to control everything. It was as if he could change the heaven and earth on that level with just a thought. He could not help but indulge in the operation of the enormous power of darkness. This is a true lord. The Dark Monarch opened his eyes, and a trace of intoxication flickered in his charming eyes. He glanced at the wings that had grown out of his back. This was the wings of darkness that had been born after his strength had increased. With this pair of wings, his movement speed would greatly increase. The Dark Monarch, Graz T, greets the ruler. Thank you for your grace. The Dark Monarch stepped forward and knelt on one knee. To be able to give him such tyrannical power with just a raise of his hand, one could see how powerful this abyss ruler was. The Dark Monarch temporarily extinguished some small thoughts in his heart. Your choice. Qin Feng looked at the Shadow Demon Queen, Rixali, Madame Fungus, and the other demon lords. The Shadow Demon Queen, Rixali, was a shapeless shadow that only faintly outlined the outline of a beautiful woman. Madame Fungus's body was a little strange. Her torso was made up of flat pieces that emitted a strange smell and curled up fungus plants, which happened to form the figure of a charming woman. For strange fibrous horns protruded from her brow bone, and sharp long claws grew from her hands. Her lower body was a bundle of thick, curled up, whip-like pseudo-legs with fungi on the surface. Her skin was covered with gray, blue, purple, and black nauseating swirls of dermatitis. Compared to the famous beautiful Suet, Red Shroud, and the other succubi, this woman was much more beautiful. The expressions of these 2 female demons suddenly became a little ugly. We are also willing to submit to the Lord Ruler. Seeing that even a powerful demon lord like the Dark Monarch had submitted, the 2 women, as good friends and allies of the Dark Monarch, did not think much and knelt on one knee to express their submission. The remaining demon lords followed suit and knelt in a large group. Very good, Shadow Demon Queen, Madame Fungus. I accept your worship as the Abyss Ruler. Shadow Demon Queen, Rixali, I, as the Abyss Ruler, bestow upon you the Lord of the 663rd Shadow Plane of the Dark Abyss. From now on, you are the Lord of Shadows, Rixali. Madame Fungus, Zugmoy, the 202nd Shadow Plane of the Dark Abyss, is similar to your Plague Plane. With the support of this space, you will be promoted to a Plague Lord. 2 origins representing the Dark Abyss Lords flew out and landed on the 2 female Fiend Lords. Thick purplish-black darkness aura could be seen, transforming on the 2 demon lords' bodies. The 2 demon lords' bodies began to change. The Shadow Demon Queen's body changed from a shapeless shadow to a cold, elegant, and domineering woman in black clothes with dense darkness power. A greenish-yellow aura surged on Madame Fungus' body. The flakes and curls of fungus around her began to melt in the greenish-yellow aura, gradually turning into a beautiful woman in greenish-yellow clothes. Here, the dense darkness source of the plague emitted from her body, and her divine power broke through to the high-grade divine power realm from mid-grade divine power. The same was true for the Shadow Demon Queen. Her strength had greatly improved. The two women could not hide the joy on their faces. The improvement of their divine power was secondary to the fact that they had finally gotten rid of that terrifying and ugly appearance. Many thanks for the Lord's grace. The two women were overjoyed. Qin Feng nodded. His gaze swept over the remaining demon lords. He did not treat the remaining demon lords as well. They had only been baptized by a trace of darkness power and changed their forms to be more adapted to the environment of the dark abyss. As for the increase in strength, it was very little. But even so, the newly born demon lords were overjoyed. Qin Feng looked at the battlefield above him, where the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss were fighting. After the dark abyss lord, Graz ZT, of the three great monarchs of the bottomless abyss, submitted, the dark abyss will finally completely suppress the bottomless abyss will and engulfed it. The power of the dark abyss will of darkness sharply increased, and the enormous aura seemed to envelop the multiverse, shocking everyone. At the same time, as the bottomless abyss was engulfed, the power of the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss began to merge. The vast countless planes began to fuse under the power of the two great abysses. Qin Feng's eyes flickered with a bright red radiance. As the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss fused, an enormous power flowed back into his body. The countless mysteries of the bottomless abyss in the depths of his divinity were grasped by him. Chapter 1298. At the same time, the pustules formed by the dark abyss above the crystal wall seemed to have melted, turning into a mass of liquid that blended into the many planes of the multiverse, most of which blended into the bottomless abyss. Seeping into the depths of the bottomless abyss, the darkness origin assimilated the layers of the abyss. There was a strong surge of power in Qin Feng's body, as if he was an omnipotent god of creation in the abyss. The earth-shattering change did not escape the eyes of the gods and the devils of the nine hells. The gods were stunned. Before the gods could even react, the entire dark abyss and the bottomless abyss had completed the initial fusion. The gods, led by the sun god Horus Re, were speechless. They had miscalculated. The gods originally thought that even if the dark abyss wanted to devour the bottomless abyss, it would probably go through a long battle, and the gods would have time to intervene. Now they were dumbfounded. Who would have thought that Qin Feng's actions would be so fast? In less than a few days, the bottomless abyss would be devoured. Stop! We must stop the fusion of the two abyss. Although they did not know the existence of Qin Feng, the master of the abyss, the gods reached a consensus in an extremely short period of time. It turned out that a demon lord-born in the bottomless abyss was enough for the gods to torment. If the two abyss fused, it would definitely spew out several times, or even 10 times more demons. At that time, the gods would probably not be able to resist. Among the gods, the god of light, Luo Shanda, was the most proactive. Rumble. At the edge of the fusion of the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss, there was a bright divine light that cut through the sky. The loud heavenly hymn, accompanied by a grand and magnificent aura, cut through the first layer of the bottomless abyss, like a rainbow that wanted to cut off the fusion of the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss. Rumble. The entire first layer of the abyss seemed to have been slashed by a holy and mighty sword. The two abyss wills that were in the midst of fusion suddenly froze, and the last power of the bottomless abyss will begin to rebound. The black and red will begin to tremble faintly and separated. The black represented the will of the dark abyss, and the red represented the bottomless abyss will. When the black will devour the red will, The two had already fused into one. However, as the sword slashed across the 10,000 abyss plane, the red will showed signs of separating again. At the same time, Qin Feng sensed that several other powerful auras had also awakened in the depths of the abyss, quietly hiding in the dark. These existences seemed to have gained the favor of the final power of the abyss, waiting for a counterattack. It could be said that there were internal and external troubles. On the first floor of the abyss, as the resonant hymn descended, the numerous demons on the first floor were bathed in holy light, as if frost had encountered the sun. Like melting snow, it melted away. Damn it, it's Luo Shanda. The dark monarch, Graz T, had a gloomy expression. Sovereign, he was just about to speak when Qin Feng stopped him. Leave them to me. You have another mission. Qin Feng's gaze landed in the distance. There are many guys in the abyss who are ready to make a move. I'll leave those guys to you. The dark monarch's eyes flickered. You mean, it's the Queen of Chaos and Song Yi, your mother. They seem to have obtained the final power of the abyss and are secretly contacting some of the demon lords. I need you to stall them for a while. Qin Feng didn't seem to notice the strange look in the dark monarch's eyes. I'll leave them to you. Qin Feng's figure flashed and disappeared. The next moment, he left the abyss. His figure paused slightly. Then he turned around and coldly glanced at the Dark Monarch Palace. This mission was also a test for the Dark Monarch. If the Dark Monarch chose to betray him, he would make the Dark Monarch regret it for the rest of his life. In the palace, the Dark Monarch, the new Shadow Monarch, the Plague Monarch, and many other demon lords were silent. Many demon lords had strange expressions, and their eyes flickered with strange looks. Graz, ZT, what are your plans? After a while, the Shadow Monarch, Rakshasa, spoke. Many demon lords didn't want to be the hired thug of the Abyss Lord they had just acknowledged, especially when facing the savage Chaos Queen and the mysterious Mother of Demons. Graz ZT, in my opinion, why don't we? The new Plague Monarch licked the corner of her scarlet lips, a savage glint flickering in her beautiful eyes. The dark green light in the Dark Monarch's eyes flickered rapidly, and his gaze fell on a white-haired demon lord dressed like a butler. Weiss, what do you think this monarch should do? Rhine was the Dark Monarch's most reliable demon lord ally. The Dark Monarch was capricious and had few friends, but Weiss was one of the few he had. In the past, when the Dark Monarch was summoned to the Prime Material Plane and even imprisoned, it was this demon lord called Weiss who took charge of everything in his territory and repelled wave after wave of demon lords invading. The Dark Monarch had extraordinary trust in Wei Yin. Among the Dark Monarch's few friends, even the King of Shadows, Rixuri, who was his sister, paled in comparison to his trust. Weiss shook her head after thinking about it. Great monarch, in my opinion, why don't we offend that mysterious Abyss ruler? Why is that, Weiss? Rakshasa was somewhat puzzled. Right now, it can be said that the entire pantheon is trying to stop him from fusing the two great abysses. The gods are about to descend one after another, and after the chaos, the Mother of Demons is secretly cooperating with him. There might even be the Lord of 9 hells from the depths of the 9 hells watching from the outside. Shadow Monarch, you're wrong. Weiss shook her head, her eyes flickering with wisdom. Do you think the Abyss ruler trusts you completely? I think so. Rakshasa wanted to say yes, but in all fairness, if she was the Abyss ruler, she wouldn't trust a demon lord who had just submitted either. Moreover, demon lords were very famous in the Abyss for being capricious. The Dark Monarch Graz ZT fell into deep thought. He looked up at Weiss. You mean to say that no matter what I do, I won't affect the Abyss ruler's plans? How is that possible? Is the Abyss ruler really so powerful that he can resist the Celestial Temple's gods? Rakshasa shook her head, not daring to believe such a conjecture. The many demon lords were the same. Although demons were very powerful, none of them could face the gods head-on. They could only rely on the terrain of the Abyss to protect themselves. Chapter 1299. Seeing the expressions of the demon lords, Wayne shook her head with a solemn expression. Most importantly, even if the Abyss Lord is defeated, it will be difficult for the gods to kill him, as long as he doesn't die. Although she did not finish her sentence clearly, most of the demon lords present had a drastic change in expression. This was the revenge of an existence at the level of greater divine power. This was not something an ordinary demon lord could handle. Therefore, the Great Lord should not only look at the current success or failure. It has nothing to do with us. What is important is the Great Lord's position in the Abyss Lord's heart in the future. The Dark Monarch's demonic eyes flickered slightly as he said in a deep voice, "In that case, let's set off for the 600th level of the Ashen Nightbone Fortress." The 600th level of the Ashen Nightbone Fortress was the territory of the Mother of Demons, Ashen Night. Many demon lords responded, and the army set off, gathering toward the 600th level. Bottomless Abyss, first level, 10,000 Abyss Plane. Vast pure white light, holy power dispersed the thick clouds that covered the abyss all year round. God of light of billions, a mere greater divine power existence dares to kill his way into the bottomless abyss alone. You're courting death. Qin Feng's figure seemed to walk out of time as he looked at the sky in the distance, and the god's true body slowly descending. There was a slight sneer in his eyes. Darkness is light God slaying technique. The surging dark abyss power around him flowed along with the chaos heavenly Tao divine power in his body and instantly transformed into the connate Genesis light power. The chaos heavenly Tao divine power in his body came from the art of chaos heavenly Tao. This cultivation method's attack power was not strong, but it could neutralize the chaos heavenly Tao divine power. In addition, Qin Feng had cultivated to the 8th tier of the extreme Tao divine power, so he could transform many types of divine power at will. The transformation of darkness divine power into light divine power was truly vast and boundless. It was dozens of times more powerful than the god of light of billions, Luo Shanda, an orthodox god of light. He slapped out from afar. Bang! The god of light of billions, Luo Shanda, had a horrified expression on his face. The next moment, a torrent of light divine power burst out of his body, along with a light divine spark in his body. He was unable to resist and exploded. Boom! It was like an explosion of fireworks. A white star flew like a stream of light and landed on Qin Feng's hand. It was an extremely dazzling, pure, white divine spark. Light divine power vibrated. It was a godhood condensed from the divinity of the Lord of Glory's godhood. Clang! In the pantheon, the melodious sound of a bell echoed throughout the myriad worlds. At that moment, the expressions of the many gods and demons who were descending towards the bottomless abyss froze. He had fallen. Had the god of light, a great divine power, fallen so easily? Qin Feng's expression remained unchanged as he circulated the radiant god-slaying art. It was visible to the naked eye that the divine persona of the Lord of Glory was gradually disappearing, fusing into Qin Feng's body like flowing water. Countless divine mysteries of light and glory flashed in his eyes. Then, the god space quickly analyzed it, and the profound truths of light returned to his body. The profound truths of light that overlapped with the laws of water were absorbed. Light divinity was visibly condensing around his body. Activating the god-slaying light technique, the demons in the abyss seemed to see 9 huge pure white suns appear in the sky. The vast power of light surged to the extreme. Qin Feng looked into his body, and among the 2 divine suns revolving around the water origin divine spark in his body, the divine sun that represented the innate quintessence of the 9-yang true water was almost condensed. Just a little more. Qin Feng looked around and locked onto the sun god Horus Ray, the master of the human god system who was descending with his true body. You shall fall too. Radiant god-slaying art. The pure white light around Qin Feng was so dense that it seemed to be able to destroy everything in the world. This peerless art passed down from the immemorial sway, sovereign exploded with unimaginable power in his hands, suppressing and absorbing all light energy and purifying all non-light energy. A palm slammed down from the void. Boom! The sun god Horus Re, who was descending with his true body, felt that above the firmament, a vast and boundless palm had firmly grasped the space around him. At the same time, a mighty power that could absorb all things was born in the palm, and the divine power around him flowed towards the palm like a river. This kind of light energy, the sun god Horus Re, was extremely shocked. The other party was also using a kind of light energy, but that kind of light energy seemed to be several times more powerful than his sun god power. The sun god power in his body seemed to have no resistance in front of that kind of light energy. It was like a lowly WIRM meeting a purebred ancient dragon. The vast and mighty light energy drowned. Clang! The bell in the Pantheon temple rang again. Yet another deity had fallen. In the multiverse, it was as if the world had completely lost its brilliance in an instant, and only a dim moon in the multiverse illuminated the heavens. The sun god had fallen. This time, even the ordinary mortals of the Pharaon continent felt the phenomenon of a god's fall. 2 strikes. 2 powerful gods had fallen. At this moment, many gods who were descending with their true bodies in the bottomless abyss reacted. Ignoring their fear, the gods tried their best to lift their bodies, trying to escape from this area. In the bottomless abyss, many demon lords were dumbfounded. The Dark King and the others were almost soaked in cold sweat. 2 powerful gods had been killed as easily as slaughtering chickens. They were still thinking of betraying? If they betrayed the Abyss Master, the consequences, the souls of the demon lords were trembling, especially Red Shroud, the ruler of the first layer near the 10,000 Abyss Plane. She was standing beside the former succubus queen, Mechanset. She couldn't help but tremble from the skin of this young demon lord. This was the first time she had felt it the most intensely. Under that vast and mighty divine might, she felt like an ant in the tide, about to be crushed to death by that terrifying divine might at any time. Unbelievable. There's actually such a terrifying existence in the bottomless abyss. In the Pantheon temple, the moon goddess Serene and the night goddess Shar were pale. The rich light energy absorbed the sun god's divinity. Many mysteries about the sun god's divinity were analyzed by the main god space. But the rich sun god's divinity was swallowed by the chaos origin divine power in an instant. The 9 huge suns in the sky above the abyss seemed to have a little red color. Qin Feng closed his eyes and opened his arms. The divine might around him rose to another level. The vast and gentle light energy swept through the entire first layer of the bottomless abyss. What was strange was that the vast light energy rushed into the bodies of the countless demons, but it didn't melt or purify them. Instead, the demons felt that the light energy, which they hated the most in the past, had become extremely warm. It seemed to have purified their bodies and demon souls, and countless impurities were taken away. The 14th water-type heavenly law, 9 suns dazzling sky. Chapter 1300. The 14th water elemental law, 9 suns dazzling. Originally, the 14th water elemental law that Qin Feng had prepared to perfect was Daishang's elemental law of the Azura Blood River primordial water. This time, after devouring the god of light, Luo, Shanda, and the sun god, Horus Re, he had perfected the elemental law of the connate 9 suns primordial water first. The 14th water elemental law, 9 suns dazzling, was perfected from the elemental law of the water elemental law of extreme yang. It combined the power of creation, assimilation, and purification in the elemental law of the water elemental law and brought these 3 powers to the extreme. This was similar to the power of creation and purification in the divine personas of Light and Sunday. The divine power around him surged. Qin Feng's gaze locked onto the remaining great divine powers among the gods. The halfling god system's Master Yodaha, the dwarf god system's King Moradin, the elf god system's King Corellon Larishan, and the elf queen, the elf goddess of life, Angelus. There were also several great divine powers who were preparing to descend. The goddess of magic, Mystra, the god of battle, Tempest, and the disabled god of justice, Tyr. Submit or die? Qin Feng's voice was cold and indifferent. It was like a sudden clap of thunder that fell into the ears of the gods. The gods' expressions changed. Don't even think about it. At this moment, a god with a face full of vicissitudes, surrounded by a golden aura of righteousness, roared loudly. Justice will never submit to evil. He held a golden holy longsword in his hand, exuding an ocean-like holy sword aura. It was the great divine power, Tyr, the god of justice. This god's doctrine was justice, and he was almost paranoid about the existence of the evil camp. He could not tolerate any sand in his eyes. Sword of judgment, judgment of justice. He waved his only arm, and the holy sword aura cut through the air toward Qin Feng. It was as if the multiverse was divided into yin and yang, black and white, right and wrong, good and evil, beautiful and ugly. God of justice, you still like to meddle in other people's business. No wonder the chaos demonic hound bit off one of your hands, and the god of creation dug out one of your eyes. Qin Feng's expression was cold. Pure white light, divine power swirled in his hand and transformed into a pure white divine sword made entirely of divine power. This was the foreign multidimensional crystal wall system, and the water-seen diffraction sword could not display its power. However, this divine sword constructed from divine power was enough. 9 suns illuminate the heavens. Above the milky white divine sword, there seemed to be 9 gigantic pure white suns flashing past, and a boundless sword light that could purify all things flew out. The sword light swept across, and the boundless golden holy sword light that was slashed by the god of justice was suddenly submerged. The remaining power didn't stop, and it was like a line of water that submerged heaven and earth. The true body of Tyr, the god of justice. Clang! In the Pantheon temple, the knell rang. Another deity had fallen. Rumble! Wherever the white light passed, the massive body of the god of justice fell apart. Even his divinity was turned into a dozen fragments by the sword, streaking across the sky like a flaming meteor, falling towards the prime material plane. The rest of the gods, including the high-level gods and mid-level gods, were pale with fright. Witnessing the fall of a great divine power right next to them, this kind of impact caused many gods to look gloomy. Lord of the Halfling Pantheon, Moradin of the Dwarf Pantheon, King of the Elven Pantheon, Corellon Larishan, Queen of the Elven Pantheon, Angrus. The few greater gods who were preparing to descend, such as Mystra, god of battle Tempest, and the others, were all aghast. Too weak. Many great divine power existences only felt that although they were all great divine powers, under that attack, they were insignificant and powerless. They could not even resist. Submit or die? On the 10,000 abyss plains, the black-robed man held the pure white longsword. This was the second time Qin Feng had asked this question. The greater gods were furious, but there was also fear on their faces. My patience is limited. The cold voice was as sharp as a blade. Your Excellency, the god of battle Tempest is willing to swear allegiance to you. Under such immense pressure, unexpectedly, the god of battle, Tempest, was the first to walk out. Qin Feng's gaze fell on the muscular, abnormally tall god of battle. Dense divine force of war flowed around him, and his brows were resolute. One could tell at a glance that he was someone with a strong will. The god of battle Tempest was born in a battle between the moon goddess and the night goddess in ancient times. His domain of divinity includes war, campaigns, and warriors. Most of his believers are soldiers and barbarians. Memories of the god of battle flashed through his mind. A wise choice. Qin Feng smiled and waved his sleeve. A strand of markings condensed from pure, godly power flew out. It flew across 10,000 feet of space and entered the battle god's forehead. It formed a blurry dragon-shaped mark on the battle god's forehead, but it soon disappeared. This is battle god Tempest's expression changed. The symbol of a god. Following that, shock appeared on his face. Although there were many gods in the Faerun crystal wall system, most of them were scattered and did not have any effective binding force. The symbol that Qin Feng had inserted into his body not only contained a trace of the chief god space's power, but also a portion of the true structure of the gods and their duties. There was even information about the outer realms. This was especially so for the information about the world outside the crystal wall system, which caused the god of battle to be absent-minded. It turned out that there was a vast, boundless world beyond the heavens and earth. Above the greater gods, there really were chief gods. At the same time, he also understood the meaning of the symbol of a god's mark. Once this mark entered his body, if he betrayed him one day, it would become a target for the chief god to lock onto and strike. It would be a life-ending talisman. Once one became a member of the god system, they could never betray him. "Father, are you all right?" At the side, a female knight covered in red armor looked worriedly at the absent-minded god of battle Tempest. "I'm fine, and I've never been better." As if he had seen the door to a new world, the god of battle Tempest's voice was filled with carefreeness. Many gods looked strangely at the god of battle, who was laughing heartily. Could it be that he was plotted against by that mysterious god? Crazy. However, the Red Knight quickly restrained her expression and stepped forward. "Since the Father is willing to submit to you, great expert, I, the Red Knight of Strategy, am willing to become your spear and charge into battle for you. And I, the god of lions, Nubian, the god of craftsmanship, Gond, the god of naval warfare and sailors, Verko, the barbarian totem god, Wushka." Some of the gods with intermediate and lesser powers who were on good terms with the god of battle spoke up, as if they had found a way out and could finally walk down the cliff. Chapter 1301. A Wise Choice. You will be glad for the choice you made today. Qin Feng welcomed the choice of these gods. His divine system was in the process of being established, and he needed a part of the lower gods to fill the divine system. These gods would also be the logistics of the divine system's future invasion of other divine systems. With them, Qin Feng would not need to personally invade the territories of other divine systems in the future or expand the Lord God space to other worlds. Qin Feng's eyes fell on the remaining group of great divine powers. The human divine system lost Horus Ray, the head of the gods, and was the first to succumb to the pressure. Isis, the goddess of love and nature. Nefertis, the guardian goddess of wealth and the dead. Soth, the god of human knowledge. Jeb, the goddess of love, and other gods of the human divine system successively surrendered. Then most of the gods of the human divine system surrendered, and the other great divine powers were the first to succumb to the pressure. The halfling divine system, under the leadership of the master of the divine system, Yudashwan, also descended and accepted Qin Feng's divine system symbol. This ancient goddess was quite powerful. Although she had been relatively low-key, as one of the ancient gods, she brought great deterrence. Moradin, the king of the dwarf divine system, then led the gods of the dwarf divine system to descend and asked to join the divine system. Moradin, the king of the dwarf divine system, gave up support. The remaining elven divine system's king, Corellon Larishan, the queen of the elven divine system, Angris, and the goddess of magic, Mistra, suddenly had no choice. Even if they were reluctant, they had to come forward and surrender. Qin Feng followed the advice without hesitation. As long as they were willing to surrender, no matter how loyal they were, he would accept them all. As for whether these people were loyal or not, Qin Feng did not care. Breaking all laws with one force. As many gods who came to cause trouble were subdued, Qin Feng felt that the links between the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss were all opened. The two abysses had completely merged, and the abyss will have become unprecedentedly huge. My lord. Next to him, a slightly respectful and delicate voice came. Queen of Succubi? The gods had long noticed Mechanut on the side. At this time, the aura of Mechanut was undoubtedly terrible. The divine power of the other party was not inferior to some of the great divine power experts present. Qin Feng looked over. At this time, there were many demon lords following behind Mechanut. Many ferocious demon lords were pale and lowered their heads, not daring to look directly at him. It was not a common sight to see so many great divine powers submitting to him. How magnificent and shocking was this scene. My lord, they are willing to accept your oracle and become your warriors. Mechanut knelt down on one knee. Qin Feng's gaze swept over them. There was no lack of ruthless characters among these fiend overlords, just like the spider goddess on the 66th floor of the bottomless abyss. Lord of the 13th floor, the goddess of misfortune, Bimpasha. Abyssal King Red Shroud, Faceless King Julix, Succubus Lord Sunalevu, Chain Lord Frederick, Magic Lord Hagen, Fire Lord Azriers, Tauren King Buffett, and so on. Seeing so many powerful demon lords, it could be said that the gods were facing a great enemy. These demon lords were each more ferocious than the other. Among them, there was no lack of ruthless characters who could even drag down the gods with great divine powers. Qin Feng looked indifferent and did not refuse. He transformed the light divine power into the dark power unique to the abyss and transformed these notorious demon lords one by one. Later, Orcus flew out from the ground and also led a group of demon lords forward. Then, the Dark Monarch and others flew out. Unexpectedly, the Dark Monarch was followed by the mysterious mother of demons, Sangyi, after being blessed by the last will of the bottomless abyss. Many of the gods looked a little stupefied, but most of them were nervous. They did not know which camp this great and ancient existence was leaning towards. Was it the evil demon camp or the camp of the gods led by light? Qin Feng was indifferent. With the transformation of the demon lords and the surrender of some of the gods, the general trend of this crystal wall system was basically under his control. Next was to eliminate the remnants. This was no longer necessary for him to do it himself. In the camp of the gods, there would naturally be people who would go up to him one by one to explain their relationship. As for the abyss camp, with the fusion of the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss, as long as they wanted to stay in the abyss, they had to submit to Qin Feng, the ruler of the abyss. The only ones left were the devils of the 9 hells. Qin Feng did not immediately move. 2 months later, on the throne of the ruler in the deepest part of the dark abyss, Qin Feng was dressed in a black and red robe. His eyes suddenly opened, and traces of joy flickered in them. At this time, the dark abyss and the bottomless abyss had finally completely merged. The new abyss was called the Chaos Abyss, and its mysteries were finally completely under his control. It was all thanks to the analysis of the creator space. Otherwise, he would not have been able to completely control the new Chaos Abyss in just 2 months. At this time, there seemed to be an endless river of blood surging in his eyes. A scarlet light surged from the pitch-black, abyss-like eyes. It was as if his eyes were pitch-black abysses. At this time, the purplish-red blood in his body was changing into a strange color. A strange power came from the depths of the abyss and poured into his body, fusing with the river of blood. His blood was undergoing a strange change. Sometimes it was yellow, sometimes it was green, but in the end, it settled into the red of an ordinary person. On the throne of the ruler, with this change, a terrifying aura emanated from his body. This power seemed to have shattered the long river of time and space. It even caused the Chaos Abyss to tremble and shake. The blood of heaven. Qin Feng's eyes flickered with a smile. As the two abysses merged, with the help of the huge abyss origin, he finally comprehended the 15th water elemental law, the law comprehended by the Khanate Azura Blood River primordial water. The Khanate Azura Blood River primordial water was a kind of profound meaning related to blood. This time, Out of Qin Feng's expectations, with the formation of the 15th water elemental law, the blood in his body was refined to the extreme. Perhaps the 15th water elemental law had something to do with blood. At this time, the blood in his body was like chaos. It was as if the mysteries of all things in the world were hidden in it. A strand of hair could shatter mountains and rivers. A drop of blood could drown the reincarnation cycle, and a gaze could make the world tremble. This was not an exaggeration. It was not an exaggeration to say that he was the blood of heaven. However, Qin Feng was more willing to call it the blood of the emperor. The blood of the emperor organized a small activity to find typos and bugs in books to receive red packets. Here's a reminder, it's best not to use pirated books to catch bugs. There are many typos in pirated books. That's the side effect of pirating. It's best to read the original version to support the author. As for what is the original version, most of the original versions charge a fee. The trick is a little deep, but reading the original version is the most glorious. Chapter 1302. Compared to 2 months ago, the power in his body was much stronger. That surging power far exceeded the realm of a great divine power. Qin Feng stood up from the ruler's throne. At this moment, a strong, majestic aura emanated from his not-so-majestic body. False Emperor Realm. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with a hint of surprise. Although he had comprehended the 15th Water Celestial Law, he was still half a step away from the 5th step of the Great Emperor Realm. He needed a huge amount of luck to purify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Celestial Law into divinity for the Godhead to completely absorb. Only then could he completely advance to the Great Emperor Realm. And the amount of luck required to purify the 13th, 14th, and 15th Celestial Law would be an astronomical figure. Perhaps only someone like the Great Emperor of the Eastern Wilderness or the many emperors of the immemorial era who had unified many spirit realms and established a divine dynasty could gather enough luck to complete the final breakthrough. However, with the creator space, Qin Feng had other opportunities. Perhaps, after unifying this crystal wall system and becoming the supreme god of the other world, I should be able to gather the endless luck to advance to the Great Emperor Realm. Qin Feng's eyes flashed with surprise. After 2 months of purging, the entire Pantheon Temple, the abyss of chaos, and many living beings and demon lords had chosen to join the divine system under the persuasion of many great divine powers. This included the 4 elemental ancient gods. The 4 elemental ancient gods were the earth elemental god Lamba, the water elemental god Istisha, the wind elemental god Arcady, and the fire elemental god Casus. There were also several other ancient gods, such as the moon goddess Serene, the night goddess Shar, and the earth goddess Chantia. On the demon lord's side, the remaining demon lords such as the deep sea king Dagon, the mystery lord, the creeping king, the Balgra lord, the 6-armed snake demon Queen Shaktari, the Knoll king Yinagu, the wind demon King Panu, the frost giant King Koshchurch, the Naga god Murshak, and the demon prince Oboxho, hiding in the depths of the abyss, had all joined the Abyss Lord's camp under the collective persuasion of many demon lords. Across the vast multiverse, there had never been such unity as there was now. Of course, the remaining gods and demon lords who weren't willing to unite silently perished, becoming the stepping stones for the many gods and demons to attack. And now, in multiverse, Qin Feng only had one final objective before him: the 9 hells. Sovereign. When Qin Feng stepped down from the sovereign's throne, 4 figures walked in from outside. They were none other than the 4 great elemental ancient gods: the earth elemental god Lamba, the water elemental god Stygia, the wind elemental god Akkadi, and the fire elemental god Casus. These 4 ancient gods had already become the 4 guardian elemental ancient gods before the Abyss Lord Demon Palace. They were always on standby, waiting for the sovereign's orders. The Sovereign Devil Palace was directly connected to the primordial chaos, and the primordial chaos energy was the densest. It was also the most suitable place for the four elemental ancient gods to cultivate. When they heard the commotion in the sovereign's devil palace, the four ancient gods immediately rushed over. Fine. Since the four of you are here, you four will accompany this king on a trip. The four elemental ancient gods looked at each other. After a while, the most straightforward fire elemental god, Kasus, asked, "May I ask, Sovereign, where are you planning to go?" "The Nine Hells." The Nine Hells. The Nine Hells was a place similar to the Abyss in the multiverse. The Nine Hells were filled with evil, violence, hatred, and destruction. They formed the enormous domain of the Nine Hells. Compared to the Abyss, the Nine Hells had a strong sense of organization. The demons lived orderly lives, and they did their best to conceal their countless schemes of betrayal and assassination. Devils and demons were both synonymous with treachery and cunning. The difference between them was that the demons had brighter skin. Not only were demons treacherous and cunning, but they also looked terrifying. It was similar to the difference between a hypocrite and a bandit. The Nine Hells had 9 layers. Travelers would always enter through the highest layer, which was Ivernus, unless they used a teleportation gate to a specific layer. Ivernus was close to the blood crevice. Thus, it became the battlefield where the demons fought against the demons. The Nine Hells were mostly inhabited by demons, but these demons mostly called themselves demons. There were also hellhounds, old ghost nannies, nightmare demons, hellbees, maggots, and so on. The Nine Hells did not contain any god's domain, and no god lived there. However, each layer was ruled by a high-level demon, and a few of them had the power to rival the gods. The ruler of the Nine Hells was Asmodeus, the Lord of the Nine Hells. With regards to Asmodeus' origins, Qin Feng had once used his peerless ability to search through many ancient sources of information in the multiverse. The Lord of the Nine Hells was one of the oldest sources in the Pharaon crystal wall. Although it was unprecedented, it had unified the Abyss and Pantheon, which represented darkness and light. Qin Feng could be said to be one of the most powerful existences in the crystal wall. However, Qin Feng did not become complacent because of this. He was not without opponents. Even now, Qin Feng, who had condensed the 14th and 15th arcane laws, had to give enough respect to those ancient existences. Among those existences, other than the creator Io and the Lady of Pain, whose fate was unknown, there was also the Lord of the Nine Hells, Asmodeus, who might be one of the twin snakes of order. In the Pharaon crystal wall, there had always been a legend about the twin snakes of creation. The most powerful existences in the Alliance of Order were the two ancient snakes. These two universal snakes embodied the duality of order, and they worked together tirelessly. The good snake of order had wings and feathers, and was born to control the power of light, belonging to the good faction of order. The evil snake of chaos had scales, a forked tongue, and was born to control darkness, and had an extraordinary understanding of evil darkness. No matter what their differences were, they were the first and most powerful representatives of order. The good snake of order and the evil snake of chaos coiled themselves in the endless chaos, forming the first ring and the basic framework of the plane. The evil snake bit the good snake's tail in its mouth, and the good snake did the same. Together, they circled a place called the Outland. Because this place was created by order and chaos, and was surrounded by good and evil at the same time, this plane was absolutely neutral. As the Outland was determined, other planes gathered around it, forming the name we know as the Giant Ring. This structure, with a neutral plane in the center and 16 planes of various factions surrounding it, was the outer plane in the general sense. In short, it was a shape formed by the two snakes that formed the multiverse, the simple prototype of many planes. But one day, the twin snakes began to hate this form that had no beginning and no end. Because of some unknown contradictions, they began to fight, and the chaos outside was broken. The foundation of many planes was shaken, and the two giant snakes began to tear each other apart. Countless chaos, snake blood spilled, combining with the endless chaos to form many outland planes, living beings and spirits. The result of the fight between the two chaos serpents was that both sides were separated. The Serpent of Order had wings and ran to Mountain Paradise in the multiverse when she was heavily injured. The blood she spilled gave birth to the Love Sting Angels, one of the light of paradise. The evil snake of chaos was heavily injured, and without wings, its huge body fell into the depths of the nine hells. Countless blood spilled, and with the presence of many other races in the plane, many kinds of demons were born. Although the crystal wall of the multiverse was not created by the twin snakes of creation, it was accelerated by the fight between the two snakes. It also absorbed the flesh and blood of the two chaos elder snakes, and evolved to become even larger. The first batch of ancient gods was also born from the clash of earth, water, wind, and fire. Asmodeus' identity was mysterious, and his origin was ancient. Many ancient gods suspected that he was a peerless existence born from the injured, evil snake of chaos, after comprehending the mysteries of the multiverse. Chapter 1303. At the top of the nine hells, above Ivernus. There were 9 levels in the 9 hells, and visitors would usually enter through the highest level, which was Ivernus, unless they used a teleportation gate to a specific layer. Red lava surged from the ground, spewing out from the cracks. The first level of the 9 hells was like a world dyed in black and red, filled with a fiery and poisonous aura. When Qin Feng and the 4 elemental ancient gods arrived, unexpectedly, there's already a group of people waiting for them on top of a volcano formed by lava. A group of archdevils, each of them exuding a surging aura of darkness, were abnormally tyrannical. First Hell's Lord Bayer, second Hell's Lord Dispart, third Hell's Lord Mamman, fourth Hell's Lords Belial and Furna, seventh Hell's Lord Barzab, and eighth Hell's Lord Mephistopheles. Many tyrannical hells were already present, waiting solemnly. However, compared to the 4 elemental ancient gods, they were clearly no match. Still, the strongest was the leader of the group. He had black hair, a black goatee, and eyes that could spit fire. He looked like a humanoid creature that was not repulsive. An extremely vast and profound power of darkness surged from his body, as if even the slightest leak would be enough to shatter the 9 hells. His essence far surpassed that of the 4 elemental ancient gods. He was the supreme ruler of the devils, the representative of evil, the highest manifestation of chaos, the master of 9 hells. Behind Qin Feng, the 4 elemental ancient gods looked at each other in shock. They had always heard of the master of 9 hells' might, but in the past few million years, he had always displayed strength at the level of a great god. He had never been as majestic and terrifying as he was today. Under that power, the 4 elemental ancient gods felt an intense sense of unease and oppression. They looked at each other, certain that if they fought one-on-one, none of them would be a match for the Master of 9 Hells. Master of 9 Hells, the ruler of the abyss? The 2 peerless existences looked at each other, discovering the deep murderous intent in each other's eyes. Qin Feng's gaze fell on the Master of 9 Hells. The soul-stirring darkness origin energy on his body was extremely majestic. As it circulated, it seemed to be able to pierce through the multiverse. This was no longer a greater divine power in the ordinary sense. This was an ancient god of darkness who had truly broken free from belief and grasped most of the origin of the crystal wall system. The 4 elemental gods could also break free from the restrictions of faith to a certain extent. They could control the 4 origins of earth, water, wind, and fire. They were considered low-level origin ancient gods. However, compared to the Master of the 9 Hells, it was nothing. The Master of 9 Hells' mastery of the origin of darkness had almost reached the realm of greater divine power. In other words, he was a 5th-step great emperor. However, upon closer inspection, Qin Feng shook his head and sighed. Master of the Nine Hells, you're no match for me. I've long heard that the Lord of the Abyss has boundless divine power and extraordinary means, but I didn't expect him to be so arrogant. The Lord of Nine Hells sat on the Chaos Demon Dog, his eyes flashing with fiery red flames of anger. He was born at the beginning of creation, before the multiverse was formed, and could be considered a kind of chaos demon god. How could he endure such disrespect? Black flames of nine hells. A clump of pitch-black flames shot out of Xiao Chen's eyes. This was a ball of dark divine fire that the Lord of Nine Hells had condensed after comprehending the origin of darkness of the multiverse. This fire was infinitely powerful and contained a destructive aura. It could even burn through a bottomless abyss. Petty tricks, Qin Feng sneered. He suddenly opened his mouth, and a strong suction force was born. The boundless dark fire raven suddenly entered his mouth like a whale sucking in water. It went down his throat and into his abdomen. The chaos origin divine power circulated, and the terrifying origin of darkness was refined into a ball of origin of darkness. It was quietly refined. The Lord of the Abyss was an existence born from the origin of darkness, of heaven and earth. To him, this kind of flame could not harm him. Instead, it became his tonic. In this multiverse crystal wall system, Qin Feng was an existence that controlled the origin of darkness. As the Lord of the Abyss, his authority was far greater than that of the Lord of Nine Hells. The Lord of Nine Hells' face became extremely gloomy. Devour darkness. A ball of pitch-black flame appeared in his hand again. It expanded in the wind, and in the next moment, it turned into a pitch-black dragon that swept toward Qin Feng. A huge wave of dark power fluctuated. The four ancient elemental gods' faces changed drastically. With just a glance, the violent flames seemed to be able to melt their divine kingdoms. It was as if a part of the origin of darkness of the entire multiverse was mobilized. Useless effort. Qin Feng's expression was calm. The chaos origin divine power in his body turned into darkness origin divine power. In an instant, it seemed as if all the darkness of the multiverse crystal wall system had returned to him. It was as if he had become the Lord of Darkness of the entire multiverse crystal wall system. He opened his arms, and a powerful origin of darkness that could devour the multiverse swept out. It seemed to have enveloped the entire Nine Hells of Bador. In the torrent, the dark dragon that the Lord of Nine Hells had unleashed was instantly dispersed by the origin of darkness. At the same time, a terrifying origin of darkness drowned the Lord of Nine Hells and the other lords of hell. In an instant, the entire multiverse crystal wall system seemed to have completely lost the light of the sun and the stars. The Lord of Nine Hells was about to be swallowed by the origin of darkness. Suddenly, a dot of light appeared between heaven and earth. In the next moment, the light fell into the depths of the Nine Hells and rushed out. It was as if a river of origin of light had blasted out from the depths of the multiverse. The boundless darkness was blasted away by the light, melting layer by layer. The darkness above the Nine Hells was blasted away. Above, an ancient god with a peerless appearance descended from the light and walked out. The mighty light spread out and dispelled the darkness that had shrouded the multiverse for more than half a month. The mighty divine power of light swept through the multiverse like a tide, causing many gods in the entire multiverse crystal wall system to be shocked. Under the fluctuations, it seemed as if even the divine kingdoms in the astral world could not withstand the fluctuations and were on the verge of collapse. Ever since the Lord of Light, Luo Shanda, and the Sun God, Horus Ray, were killed, there were no more gods of light in the multiverse crystal wall system. This ancient god's divine power was even more powerful than Luo Shanda and the Sun God, and its essence was even more terrifying. The boundless light seemed to have purified all the filth and darkness in the multiverse crystal wall system. Qin Feng looked at this ancient god with rich divine power of light, and a trace of seriousness appeared in his eyes. At this moment, he sensed that the origin of light in the depths of the multiverse seemed to have boiled to the extreme because of her appearance. Her divine power had far surpassed the level of a great divine power. This female god's comprehension of the origin of light was even better than the Lord of Nine Hells, the supreme ruler of heaven, the spokesperson of light, the highest embodiment of order, the Lord of heaven. She was also the origin of light. This would be a terrifying enemy. Chapter 1304. The Master of Nine Hells looked at the Lord of Heaven with a complicated gaze. Although he had wanted to see her all these years, he did not want to meet her under such circumstances. He did not want her to see him in such a sorry state. Say no more. The Lord of the Abyss is an extraterritorial demon god. We must eliminate him. This is our mission. As long as we kill him, the multidimensional crystal wall system can be freed from control and be reborn. The goddess of light said coldly. She looked at the four elemental ancient gods and shouted coldly, "Are the four of you still not awake?" As her voice fell, a strange power came toward the four elemental ancient gods. You can control part of the will of the multidimensional crystal wall system. Qin Feng's face turned cold, and a cold light flashed in his eyes. He waved his sleeve, and a majestic will that was not inferior to the will of the multiverse appeared. Rumble. Two invisible majestic wills collided in the void. The invisible power intertwined, and the void was distorted. Rumble. Bolts of lightning exploded in the sky above the 9 levels of hell. Countless abyss devils felt the immense power of the collision, and their faces were filled with shock as they trembled. The will of heaven and earth was an existence similar to the heavenly path. The will of the abyss that Qin Feng controlled was also a kind of will of heaven and earth. The will of the gods and the will of hell were also a kind of will of heaven and earth. And it was a relatively high-level will of heaven and earth. The power of this kind of will was extremely powerful, and its overall power was far beyond that of ordinary great divine powers. The will power of the goddess of light represented the will of heaven. The will of heaven was not so powerful, but it seemed to have been strengthened by the will of the crystal wall system in the depths of the multidimensional crystal wall system, so it became abnormally terrifying. It could even affect the judgment of the will of a great divine power. If the goddess of light hit the four elemental ancient gods, they would be able to turn the tables and become a sharp knife to deal with Qin Feng, the Lord of the Abyss. But the will of the Abyss was not weak. The will of the dark abyss first swallowed the will of the bottomless abyss, and with the submission of many gods in the pantheon, it merged with the will of the pantheon. Its power was not inferior to the will of heaven. Rumble. As the two behemoths collided, the continent of the first layer of the 9 hells began to crack. Countless lightning bolts and spatial rifts erupted from the plane. Lord Nine Hell's expression flickered as he sensed the wails of the will of the Hell of Baotou. It was almost as if he were constantly bleeding and injured. Kill. His face was ashen as he stared at Qin Feng. Cold light burst out from his eyes. With a wave of his hand, the archdevils behind him roared and charged towards Qin Feng. First Hell's Lord Bayer, second Hell's Lord Dispat, third Hell's Lord Maman, fourth Hell's Lords Belial and Fierna, seventh Hell's Lord Barzab, and eighth Hell's Lord Mephistopheles all emanated a thick demonic aura. Like a black-red meteor falling from the sky, the expressions of the four elemental ancient gods changed, and they were about to step forward. Qin Feng waved his hand and secretly transmitted his voice. "Leave this to me. You guys have other missions. Now, go to Mountain Paradise immediately and destroy all the angels in Mountain Paradise." The four ancient elemental gods, Earth Elemental God Lamba, Water Elemental God Stygia, Wind Elemental God Arcady, and Fire Elemental God Casus, glanced at each other, nodded, and disappeared. Huh? The goddess of light's expression changed slightly as she looked in the direction where the four elemental ancient gods had gone. She instantly understood how dangerous Qin Feng was. Qin Feng wanted to destroy Mountain Paradise. If he destroyed Mountain Paradise, the will of Mountain Paradise would be like a tree without a source and would naturally collapse. The goddess of light's eyes emitted a cold light, and a dense divine power of light locked onto the four elemental ancient gods in the sky. In a distant plane, the void was broken open, and the four elemental ancient gods came out of the crack. Mountain Paradise was already in sight. However, in the next moment, the four elemental ancient gods' expressions became extremely unsightly. They only felt a terrifying chill enveloping them, and they felt like they were ants under a tidal wave. It was as if they would be destroyed in the next moment. Qin Feng's expression did not change, and he was like a stream of light. Bang, bang, bang. There seemed to be 5 or 6 fireworks blooming in the void. The 6 lords of hell, Bayer, the lord of the first hell, Dispat, the lord of the second hell, Mammon, the lord of the third hell, Belial Inferna, the lord of the fourth hell, Baalzeb, the lord of the seventh hell, and Mephistopheles, the lord of the eighth hell. Their expressions froze in the void, and their ferocious faces flashed with horror. Bang, bang, bang. Bloody light flew out of the 6 lords of hell, and the 6 terrifying lords of hell were instantly torn apart. Qin Feng's figure instantly appeared beside the goddess of light. As if he had traveled through time and space, he flew out from the depths of time and space and slashed with his sword. The goddess of light's soul was chilled, and the divine power of light in her hand was extinguished. Her figure flashed across the void and disappeared on the spot. The sharp sword light slashed through the place where she had been standing. Crack! As if a piece of cloth was torn apart, a huge crack that was thousands of feet long appeared in the space where she had been standing. In a flash, the goddess of light appeared beside the lord of the 9 hells. Qin Feng flew down and stood with his sword in hand, looking at the goddess of light and the lord of the 9 hells with a cold smile. In the distant space, as the terrifying divine spell in the hands of the goddess of light was interrupted, the group of 4 suddenly felt that the terrifying danger in the void had quietly dissipated. Phew! Almost at the same time, the 4 elemental ancient gods breathed a sigh of relief. Unknowingly, their foreheads seemed to be soaked in cold sweat. Ever since the birth of the multi-element crystal wall system, the 4 great elements had gathered to form the throne. When it was born, the 4 ancient gods had never felt such a terrifying feeling. Although the 4 elemental ancient gods did not get along well with each other and were even hostile to each other, the 4 of them were definitely one of the top gods in the multi-element crystal wall system. Even existences like the Lady of Pain and the ancient god of death could at most be on equal footing with them. The 4 elemental ancient gods had never felt any pressure. But now, for the first time, a desire to become stronger arose in the hearts of the 4 ancient gods for the first time. Master God, only when you become a greater divine power, the elemental Master God, can you truly control fate. Now, there was an opportunity in front of them. The Master God space and the vast outer space. At this moment, the 4 elemental ancient gods felt a sense of urgency for the first time. For streams of flowing light flew past and rapidly flew toward Mountain Paradise. The Lord of the 9 hells and the Goddess of Light looked at the mysterious Master of the Abyss with ghastly expressions. It was not until this moment that the 2 of them clearly sensed the terror of Qin Feng. They were afraid that neither of them would be a match for this Master of the Abyss alone. Only the 2 of them together might have a chance of defeating this Master of the Abyss. Let's go together. The 2 surging powers of light and darkness, which were enough to shatter countless planes of the multi-element crystal wall system, burst out like monstrous waves that shook heaven and earth. You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.